An entitled neighbor demands that I move my car from out in front of their house, as they claim I have no right to park there, and that if I do park there again, they're going to report me to the authorities. So after receiving that letter, I not only took it personally, but I decided to get some revenge by not only happily getting the authorities involved, but also occupying the front of their house with as many cars as I could possibly get together. Here's what happened. Okay, about a month ago, I moved into a residential neighborhood, and it's important to note a few things as you read my story. My house does not have a driveway or garage, so I have to rely on street parking. This is not a gated or HOA governed area, and there are no signs, restrictions, permits whatsoever for street parking. This area is also not walking distance to anything but other houses, so anyone parking on the street is either a resident of the area or a visitor of a resident, which basically means there's no random people trying to find short-term parking. Now, it's a quiet neighborhood, so I can usually find street parking in front of or close by my house. However, there is one neighbor that lives 4 houses down that feels that they own the public sidewalk in front of their property and constantly puts down cones to block off space that would fit about 3 cars. Now, I refuse to give them the benefit of the doubt that they do this to save spots for themselves because I take my dog on frequent walks and I've never seen them use these spots to park. Additionally, they have a long driveway that never has any cars in it and a detached garage, so they already have ample parking for their personal vehicles that I've never seen. On that note, I have literally never even seen these neighbors. Other than occasionally seeing lights coming from their backyard during nighttime walks, I would probably assume that there's no one living there. Shades are always closed in the front windows, and I never see any inside lights on from the front. One day I drove home and there was no parking available except in front of their house. It was late and I didn't want to park a block away just because of this entitled house. So I simply moved a couple of their cones to the sidewalk and I parked my car. The next morning, I saw that they had moved the cones back to the street behind my car, which I had to move again to get my car out, meaning that they definitely noticed and acted upon my illegal street parking, but you know what? I just shrugged it off. A week or so later, I couldn't find any parking again. So the exact same situation happened. I moved the cones and I parked my car. And what do you know it? The next day, I simply moved the cones they placed behind my car and I went about my day. Yesterday, I had the situation happen yet again, and as a side note, this is only the 3rd time in a month that I've moved the cones to park there. And as I take my dog on a walk this morning, I see a note on my windshield. It's not even handwritten and it's some kind of like printed note. It says the following: "This plate number has been turned into the parking enforcement. We encourage you to park in front of your own residence for the consideration of your neighbors." Well, needless to say, this note really pissed me off. First of all, if you believe in consideration of your neighbors, then you shouldn't be blocking access to public parking spots where your neighbors can park their car. Secondly, now you're threatening me for parking legally. It's like, do you want to start this fight? Because I will make you pay for it. And honestly, that is exactly what I started to do. My first revenge is that I called parking enforcement myself and I explained the situation, and the lady on the other end just laughed and said that my neighbors had no authority to give me any kind of notice like that, which I assumed to be the case. They also gave me a number to a Bureau of Street Services investigator who can come to take a look and then issue them a citation. Well, lucky for my neighbors, they are currently closed for the week as it is Friday afternoon, but trust me, I will be calling again on Monday morning. My second revenge is that I live with my girlfriend who has her car parked in front of our house. So you know what? I moved her car in front of the house with the cones to now make it 2 cars that they didn't want there. The added bonus is that she has a Tesla, so there will be cameras in case they try to do anything to either of our cars. Now, the potential third revenge is that if the citation situation doesn't happen or work out for whatever reason, I'm considering purchasing the ugliest, oldest, and cheapest car that I can find in my area and register it as a planned non-operational vehicle with a DMV and then keep it forever parked in front of their house. All things considered, I have no apparent reason why they wouldn't want to have anyone park in front of their house other than some simple aesthetic that they just want to maintain. They don't use the spots to park their own vehicles, and we would never have random people wanting to park there on a regular basis. But I'm honestly eager to see what happens because these people are absolutely out of their mind. Oh man, I can't stand people who act like this. The original poster states they live in Los Angeles, so literally there's no room for anyone as it is. So the fact that these people are like, oh yeah, we're gonna reserve all these spots in front of our house because we don't want people parked there. Like, that is so selfish and so messed up. They don't own the street. They can't just do that and get away with that. And I'm pretty sure this investigator is gonna have a field day with these people. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would be taking pictures of everything. I would save that letter and document it and take pictures of everything around you and really prove that these people are acting out of line, especially with them putting the cones right back around your cars. Like, are you kidding me right now? That is so weird. Like, seriously, get away from my car. Because in the end, I'm anticipating these people being proven wrong pretty much immediately. honestly, because what they're doing is incredibly entitled. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for walking away when I was asked to apologize for something that I didn't do? Because right now I feel like I did something wrong. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of context, I used to be best friends with a guy who we will call Brad, as well as his girlfriend who we will call Diane. All three of us used to eat lunch together, along with a few other friends. I am usually very chatty and social, but my grandpa had been in the hospital the past few days, and I wasn't as chipper as I usually am. So when Diane asked me to go with her to throw something away, I said yes so I could explain the situation to her. And also for reference, this wasn't abnormal for us to leave the guys for a few minutes, as this was usually a chance for us to talk without them. When we were away from the guys, I apologized for not talking as much and explained how my grandfather was in the hospital. Well, she stopped me mid-sentence and said, "Do you like my shirt?" She was wearing one of those black shirts that was tie-dyed with a bleach heart, and when she said this, I was really confused. So I responded by saying, yeah, I guess. Can I get back to talking about my grandpa who's in the hospital now? She then proceeded to sigh before saying, "I guess." By this point, we had finally gotten back to Brad and the rest of the group, and they saw we were obviously upset and asked what had happened. Before we could explain, Diane had stormed off, leaving me to explain the situation. After I had said what had happened, Brad asked me, "Well, why can't you just say I'm sorry?" It's important to note that until this point, I had been apologizing to Diane no matter what, if I was wrong or not, and I did this simply because I thought it was better than fighting. However, after some much-needed therapy, I decided to stop doing that and had determined that I shouldn't have to always apologize when things aren't my fault. After he said this, I was almost in tears because I felt like all those months of progress were going down the drain, and this is where I might be the jerk. Instead of explaining why I was upset, just like Diane, I stormed away without explaining or clearing things up. As I walked away, I could hear Brad telling his friend, "Wait, what did I do?" Which just made me more upset. So am I the jerk for walking away instead of explaining why I was upset? Because right now I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong. Okay, I don't think you're the jerk, but I also think your friends are incredibly immature. Seriously, Diane storms off when you're about to be like, "Oh, I'm upset about my grandfather, it's not a big deal." Like, she literally is just super insensitive and doesn't care about your family in the slightest. And neither does Brad. Like, both of them really suck in my opinion. And the fact that Brad would even be like, "Oh, well, why didn't you apologize to Diane?" Like, that kind of behavior is super toxic and I can't stand that. Because you know what? I am a firm believer that you never have to apologize for something you didn't do. If it's not my fault and I had nothing to do with it, then congratulations, you are never getting an apology out of me. Why would you? That doesn't make any sense. It's idiotic, and honestly, it sets a really bad precedent. So no, you're not the jerk for walking away, because these people just don't sound like good friends in the slightest, and I really think that you can find better people than them. My entitled owner and employees claim that I'm not doing my job properly and that I need to work the front desk with all the other girls. But despite the fact that I manage a day spa and have a lot of other responsibilities, I'm getting paid a lot of money at a salary level for a job that I literally did not sign up for. Here's what happened. Okay, so I manage a day spa of about 25 employees, 4 receptionists, 2 phone lines, about 60 appointments per day, and we're open 7 days a week for about 10 hours each day. Now, at the time of this story, the receptionists have become disgruntled that I don't help them with their front desk duties as much as they seemingly feel that I should. And when I say as much as they think I should, what I mean is that they think I should be there 7 days a week from open to close doing their job side by side with them. But in reality, what they're really implying is that they want me to do it for them. Not only did they not even try to address this with me, but they went over my head and directly to the owner, who didn't even refer them back to me so that we could try to come up to some sort of understanding together. And instead of the owner letting them know I do a lot of other things, even when I'm not there to operate the business, and reminding them I have a lot of other employees and responsibilities to handle, he instead took their side, yelled at me for 4 hours, and then the next day yelled at me again in front of the one complaining to him for another hour. He showed these girls his support and offered me none, and ultimately said that I need to be up there working with them instead of handling other things around the spa. His reasoning is that they need help, and I should be at the desk at all times because I'm the face of the company. One of the girls told him, in front of me mind you, that all I do is laundry, but it's a day spa, so there is a lot of laundry that accumulates very, very quickly, and there's no one else to do it. It technically is a receptionist duty, and I tried to alleviate as much off of the receptionist as I could, so that is something that I've taken full accountability for except on my days off. When the owner tells me that I need to be up at the front, answering phones with the receptionist on duty, and that I need to arrive earlier to do this, you know, instead of him paying a second receptionist because he's too cheap and greedy to do so, I said to him, "You do not pay me to answer phones. You pay me to operate your business and keep things running smoothly in your absence? Well, his response was that he also doesn't pay me to do laundry, and that's what I do all the time when I'm here. And it's like, oh really? That's all I do? Yeah, okay buddy. This all took place about 3 days ago, and since then I do not leave the front desk, except maybe to go to the bathroom one time during my shift. Despite the fact that I'm salary, so technically I don't have a shift, I just work a ton of hours, of course, with no extra compensation. But I have not touched the laundry since this conversation, and while it is kind of getting done, it's not getting done properly or efficiently, and it is starting to pile up. And we're talking both dirty laundry overflowing the baskets and clean unfolded laundry piling up on all the massage tables. When I walk past the nonsense, I just glance over and keep it moving. It is hard for me to leave things undone because I do have a strong work ethic, but since he doesn't pay me to do laundry and has made it clear he would rather overpay me to answer phones, you know, while they scroll their social media and stare into dead space, and instead of me actually running the business, that's exactly what I'm doing. And you know what? I'm curious how long it will take him before he tries to come back and tell me I'm not doing my job because the laundry is in shambles. Because at that point, I'll say something like, but sir, I'm doing exactly what you told me to do, or should I say exactly what my own employees have told me I need to be doing, and you agree with them. At this point, I feel like they think I'm their employee because of how he handled it. The root of the problem is that they only get paid $15 an hour, and it's a high volume place, so the workload is intense, and I've never denied that. I do help them often, and I've always gone to bat for them, asking him to pay them more and begging him to budget for 2 people to be at the front desk during the busiest hours, as it certainly is a 2-person job. But I did not sign up or accept the position of a receptionist. I'm 48 and these girls are in their 20s. I will help when I can, but I'm the manager and there are a lot of things I have to prioritize. But you know what? If he wants to pay me far more to do the same job others are paid $15 an hour to do, then who am I to argue? As the business starts to fall apart since I'm not handling other things anymore, which by the way, how can I, when I have to perform their job with them the whole time, he will start to realize how much I was in fact doing when he and his receptionist team thought that I was only doing laundry all day. Okay, I really like this mentality, but I don't think it's gonna last, because I don't think he's gonna come back to you begging for you to fix the problems. If anything, he'll probably just fire you and get someone else for cheaper and probably save a bunch of money while also not getting a second receptionist at the front desk during the busy hours. Like, I really only see this as a net negative, and I don't think this is gonna go well for you. So in my opinion, if I was in your job, I would be finding another job. And sure, you're getting paid really well to be a receptionist for now, but I guarantee you that could change at the drop of a hat, especially with an owner who's so stupid they don't realize what they're doing. So I think it's in your best interest to find something else, because this guy could easily flip the table on you in a heartbeat. I'm considering breaking up with my girlfriend after she catfished me as a prank on Instagram, because after she impersonated one of my female coworkers under the guise that she would somehow catch me cheating, I now feel completely betrayed, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So me and my girlfriend have been together for 2 years. I always thought she was very sweet and kind, and I really appreciate how much she loves me, and while she sometimes got a little jealous, I didn't think it was a big deal. Deep down, maybe I even enjoyed being doted on like that. It made me feel really attractive, which I never really felt like I was. Recently, we attended a work event organized by my company, and we met one of my coworkers there. She works at a different branch, and we hardly ever talk outside of work emails and calls, but we get along well enough. This event was my girlfriend's first and only time meeting this coworker. On the way back from the event, and the following day, my girlfriend was acting a little weird. She kept asking me about a work wife, and asking if I thought my coworker was pretty and other stuff about her. I knew my girlfriend could get kinda jealous, and I did my best to calm her down. No, that woman isn't my work wife. I don't follow her on any socials. I don't even have her personal phone number. I don't think she's more beautiful than my girlfriend, and I'm happy with my girlfriend, etc. and so on. Eventually, she seemed to relax and things got back to normal. Well, a few weeks later, out of nowhere, I got a follow request on Instagram from my coworker, and it's important to note that my account is on private. I approved the request and I followed her back as her account was also private. That account was almost nothing but a few pictures of her in swimsuits uploaded very recently. And at the time, I didn't really check, and I honestly didn't even scroll her account at all. It didn't look like anything overtly scandalous, just normal vacation pictures, but there was nothing but vacation pictures. It seemed weird, but I didn't really care. Then a few days later, she direct messaged me on Instagram. It was just small talk and I replied, but it wasn't flirty or anything like that in my opinion. She kept reaching out every few days, and eventually it did seem like it kinda got flirty. I told her I felt this was inappropriate and that I was in a relationship, and I would appreciate it if we kept things professional, which she seemed okay with. Well, my girlfriend seemed extra affectionate the days after that, and while I didn't suspect anything in real time, you can all probably see exactly where this is going. anything. Still, at the time, I was happy, and my girlfriend even seemed to be better regarding her jealousy. But then, last week, I got a follow recommendation on my Instagram, and it was my coworker's real account. This one wasn't private, and was just a normal Instagram account, and just by looking through it, that was where those swimsuit pictures came from. Here they were, just a part of her normal Instagram account, which contained mostly normal pictures, and not just ones with her in a swimsuit like the other account had. It was then that I put two and two together. Before confronting my girlfriend, I talked to that coworker at work, and I asked her for her Instagram account, and she gave me her normal one, which I followed. And indeed, she gave me no indication that we ever interacted on Instagram before. So it became clear I was being catfished. I then confronted my girlfriend, and at first when I was trying to be subtle, she denied everything outright. Then she shifted to gaslighting me about it and saying that it was just a prank, or she would say that it was a test, or that because she was cheated on before, she just needed to know that she could trust me. I told her that her being able to trust me was great, but how am I supposed to trust her now? She said that made no sense, and kept deflecting no matter how hard I tried to explain, going so far as to question how I even knew it was her if I wasn't cheating on her with my coworker. I told her that this was unfair and manipulative, and that I needed some time, and I just went home. She's been texting me and calling me ever since, saying that I'm ruining a great relationship over nothing, that I'm overreacting, and that when I finally realize how much she loves me, it might be too late, and it's not fair for me to throw away everything we've built over my stupid coworker. But to me, that just feels incredibly manipulative, and like she doesn't get what she did wrong at all. So I'm conflicted between wanting to just cut and run, or giving it another go. After all, we have been happy together for 2 years. But also, can I trust that we can rebuild something after this? Because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. Oh wow, your girlfriend literally decided to go behind your back and catfish you, and then still somehow blame it on you. Like she's literally trying to be like, oh, this is nothing, you're ruining our relationship. But it's like, no lady, you did that. You're the one that did that the second you tried to catfish your boyfriend. This is so stupid, it's not even funny. If anyone's insecure and weird about this relationship, it's your girlfriend. Like this is the worst case of self-sabotaging I've ever seen in my life. And worst of all, it's completely self-inflicted. She literally did this to herself for no good reason other than her own insecurity and paranoia. Like you should not have to be tested like that in any way, shape, or form. Because I know that would not sit well with me at all. I would be questioning everything just like the original poster is. Because it would immediately make me wonder if this is really someone I want to stay with. Is this really the person I want to spend the rest of my life with? Or even get married to? And she even did this without any care of like consequences or anything like that. Like screw that, you could have lost your job over this. Because in my opinion, anyone who has to test their partner's loyalty by making fake accounts just to like instigate some kind of cheating situation, in my opinion, probably should not be in a relationship in the first place. You're clearly not in a healthy place in life, and this is not fair for the original poster or other people who go through this. So no, you're not the jerk here, and honestly, I think you can do a lot better than your current girlfriend, because her actions, in my opinion, are just a little too sketchy. Am I the jerk for telling my autistic brother to stop correcting me on something that I know more than him about? Because right now, my mom says that I was out of line, but at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 23-year-old female, and I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. And psychology also happens to be my 14-year-old autistic brother's special interest. I was visiting my family this past week, and my brother and I have been chatting about different interesting psychology things a lot. However, he likes to use social media as his prime source of information, which is fine, as long as you do more research before believing and repeating things. But he tends to just believe anything that he hears without fact-checking, especially if it's something that intrigues him. So it happened multiple times, where he would throw me a fun fact that was false, or he would correct me on something that I was telling him about with misinformation that was just not true. Now, I'd always been super gentle correcting him and reminding him to double check his information. Even though I did find it quite annoying, I never was harsh with him at all. But last night at the dinner table, we were talking about the structures of the brain and how psychology and medical things overlap. The conversation was mainly between my mother and I, as she's a doctor and could speak for the medical part of this, while my brother was just tuning in. We were talking about strokes and how it affects the brain, and I began explaining to my father about the left and right brain and how they control opposite sides of the body, when my brother stopped me to say that I was wrong and that it was the opposite way. I once again gently corrected him, but he was insistent that he was correct. I then reminded him that I was the one with the degree in this topic, and then he dropped it. Later after dinner, my parents, my brother, and I were all in the living room watching a movie that was on TV. During one of the commercial breaks, my brother brought up the left and right brain thing again, going on about how I was supposedly incorrect. I was really just done with the topic, and I was getting a little tired of being constantly corrected with misinformation. And I do not think that I said this in any aggressive or rude way, but my exact words were to say to him, I'd really appreciate it if you'd quit correcting me when you're incorrect. Your source of information is random people on the internet. My sources are textbooks, experimental documentation, and the DSM-5. My brother had then stormed off to his room, upset by what I had said, and my mother told me that I should have just let him have his way because he's autistic and just a kid, and in no way was I trying to attack my brother or be selfish and full of myself. I genuinely just wanted him to have the correct information, but the constant correcting began to get on my nerves just a little bit. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now I really don't know what to do. No, you are not the jerk. Your brother is literally wrong. He's spouting off wrong information all because he read it on the internet instead of getting it from like a verified source. And I don't know about you, but that's something that absolutely needs to be corrected. And also, why should your brother get a pass just because he's autistic? Like, in my opinion, that's an awful excuse and that just doesn't stand. There's no reason that should be used as some kind of like get out of jail free card, because that doesn't help your brother in the slightest. Because in my opinion, letting him get his way is just not going to do him any favors. And I think you did the right thing by patiently and kindly telling him that you didn't want to talk about it and that he needs to get better sources than social media. My entitled brother steals all of my beer out of my fridge after I let him come over to my place to watch a TV show. But once I found out, I decided to go nuclear by getting my parents involved and ruining any chances he had at denying that he did it. Here's what happened. So this happened some years ago. I don't let my brother stay over at my apartment because he's a blatant thief with any beer in my fridge. If I did something like get a lock for my fridge or something like that, then he would hide bolt cutters in his car. That is just the kind of person that he is. Anyways, years ago, he wanted to stay over at my apartment to watch something on TV. At the house he rented a room in, along with numerous other guys, they often fought over the TV. So I said fine, I would just be in my bedroom playing BioShock Infinite. Well, he showed up with a 6-pack of really cheap beer. I told him not to touch the good stuff in my fridge and to be out by the morning. Then I booted up my PS3 and wailed on some enemies with my skyhook. I had a few beers in the bedroom with me in a mini cooler, so I wouldn't have to interact with my brother unless I had to. I played for a couple of hours and then I passed out in my bed. When I woke up in the morning, I went to make some coffee. I was out of creamer, so I was just gonna use some milk. But when I opened the fridge, all of my beer and a bottle of whiskey was gone. This was good beer and whiskey too. The beer was a honey beer I still buy on the regular, and the whiskey was Jim Beam honey. I was instantly furious because I knew my no good, rotten, alcoholic thief of a brother stole them. So I called him up. It took 3 tries before he finally picked up his phone, and then he had the audacity to deny he even took the booze. But I pointed out that I had this stuff in the fridge, and it was gone in the morning, and he left before I got up. It literally only could have been him. Well, that finally made him own up to taking it, and then he complained he couldn't resist good booze. I told him I don't care what he can or cannot resist. I wanted it all back, but he brushed me off and said to just go to the store and get some more. I felt like I nearly burst a blood vessel in my brain because I was so angry, but he just hung up the phone on me. The next part I'm so proud of, but it's pretty much my brother's biggest weakness. I called our parents. They were pretty mad on my behalf too, because dad especially appreciates the kind of booze I do, and immediately called my brother. I don't know what dad said to him, but my brother called a little while later and basically said to me, "Really? You got mom and dad involved?" I told him to bring the booze back, and if he opened any of it, he has to replace it. He said to me, "Screw you," and then hung up the phone. He showed up at my door later with the whiskey and beer. He hadn't opened the whiskey yet, but he had started in on the beer, so he had to buy another pack on the way there. Only it wasn't the same beer. It was the cheap garbage he always bought. I told him that wasn't gonna cut it, and he knew it. He said to just take it because he wasn't going back to the store. I then picked up my cell phone and I said, well, perhaps maybe I should call your ex-girlfriend next. She's almost as good at cowing him as our parents. He said I wouldn't dare, but I was ready to push the buttons. So he said, fine, and trudged back to his car. He came back about 20 minutes later, shoved a case of honey beer in my hands, then flipped me off with both hands as he walked away. Yeah, he's that immature. I told him he wasn't welcome to stay over ever again. And he said something like, yeah, whatever, big deal, all before taking off. True to my word, I haven't let him stay over since. He's been here for a party a few times, but I always watched him like a hawk because he still tried to take my good beer. He even got really upset when I made him put a can back in the fridge and only drink the cheap stuff. And there were times he wanted to see something on TV at my place, but I refused after what he did before, and he acted like a complete jerk for it. I said I didn't care. He messed around and he absolutely found out what the consequences were. How rude of your brother. Like seriously, if you're gonna come over to somebody's house, the least you can do is be respectful of their property. Like I'm sure if he went up up to you and he said, hey, could I have some of your beer in the fridge? You might have been more inclined to let him have like one beer or something like that. But the fact that he just straight up stole it and said nothing, that in my opinion is completely inexcusable. So good for you for doing whatever it takes to get your stuff back, because your brother absolutely should not have stolen from you, and he absolutely got exactly what he deserved. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Am I the jerk for confronting my friend for taking our picture out of his wallet just to replace it with his girlfriend's? Here's what happened. So my best friend John and I have been friends since we were kids. As kids, we were very close, and we had a fake wedding when we were 7 and 8. In high school, we recreated the fake wedding pictures, and he had one of those pictures in his wallet. Since he got his girlfriend by the name of Sarah, that's not her real name, and this was around 2 years ago, John has distanced himself from me. We still hang out, but I feel like he always makes time for her instead of me. The only way I can see him now is if we grab a coffee once every few days, but other than that, he won't come to my house when he used to have sleepovers and movie nights, and he won't invite me to his house either. I feel neglected and hurt because we've been inseparable since we were small kids. A couple of days ago, I grabbed a coffee with him at a coffee shop, and when he opened his wallet to grab his card, I noticed that he put a picture of him and his girlfriend in the place he had our fake wedding pictures at. I asked him about it and pointed out how I noticed, to which the only thing he said was, well, what about it? I was like, really? Why did you take our picture out and replace it with him and his girlfriend? He said that his girlfriend is, well, his girlfriend, and he doesn't understand why I'm making such a big deal out of it. I reminded him that she might be his girlfriend, but he can't just throw me away. I've been his best friend since primary school. My picture existed in his wallet first, and he throws it away to replace it with someone he knows significantly less. He eventually got annoyed and told me that once I stop being an immature, annoying brat, he'll talk to me again. Until then, I better leave him to his peace because he's not dealing with my childish tantrums. So honestly, am I the jerk for confronting my friend about this? Am I in the wrong? What should I do? It's really crazy to think that the original poster is serious in this situation. You're really upset that your friend got rid of your fake wedding photo pictures and put a picture of his girlfriend there instead? Like seriously, you two are not dating. Unless you secretly had a thing for him ever since you were a kid, but like even then, you have no claim over this guy in his life. Your friend is 100% in the right. You're absolutely being an idiot, and he has no obligation to try and keep that picture around if he doesn't want to. Also, that's incredibly uncomfortable. Like seriously, you're attached to this guy as if you actually are married to him. But guess what? You're not married to him. Those were pictures that you took in high school as well as when you were children. And now in your early 20s, it's time to let that stuff go and just like, I don't know, move on with your life. Maybe move on and find an actual relationship instead of trying to cling to this pretend marriage that you clearly are really attached to. Like if you take a step back, this is incredibly weird. Like really, really weird. Like why would this guy seriously think that a pretend photo of the both of them getting married should somehow take precedent over his actual girlfriend? And it's also weird that this guy doesn't realize that his girlfriend absolutely is going to come first in this relationship, meaning that her picture is definitely going to be there in his wallet instead of your staged married photo. So truly, the original poster is absolutely at fault here, and his friend has every right to be annoyed because his friend is acting like a jealous ex, even though they never had anything like that in the first place. Am I the jerk for calling my sister out when she judged me for living at home and wanting children later in life? Here's what happened. So I'm a 25-year-old female and I live at home with my parents. I did live alone before, but due to my mental health at the time, I moved back home. My health is now getting better, and I'm saving up with my partner to move out. I also pay rent to my parents, and I'm also paying my way as well. My older sister judges me for living at home and states that she moved out at 18 years old and it's not that hard. However, my sister seems to forget that she moved in with her then boyfriend's family, and after they broke up, she moved in with her now husband and basically has never lived on her own or really even paid a dime in rent. Yet she's the one judging me. Anyways, I travel with my best friend to go visit my sister as we both live a plane ride away from each other. As I arrived at my sister's place, she decided to say in front of my friend, who also lives at home, that it's super weird that I still live at home, and when she was 25, she was already married with a child. I told her that I'm going to wait until my 30s to have my children, and I'm saving up to move out. She then laughed at me and said that having children in my 30s is so old. But then I said to her, well, not all of us are lucky enough to marry rich. She didn't like that comment and called me a jerk. So honestly, this begs the question, am I the jerk for calling my sister out after she's she's been judging me for living at home. Your sister sounds like a massive jerk. You are not the jerk in this situation, in my opinion. She is going over and beyond just to try and treat you like garbage, all because you live at home. And like, seriously, how does she not understand the extenuating circumstances? Like, she sounds incredibly ignorant, and the way she's treating you is so inappropriate. I'm also a firm believer that if you can dish it, you certainly better be able to take it. And it sounds like you flipped the script on your stupid sister, and you said to her, hey, you married rich. Not all of us can get that lucky. And that, in my opinion, was a completely reasonable response. She's been hitting you with this for a long time. And if I was in your shoes, I probably would have said something similar as well. So I would not feel bad about this at all, because your sister started this mess to begin with. And if she's gonna start it, then you absolutely can finish it. My cousin puts an entitled Karen in her place, leaving her fuming and flabbergasted. Here's what happened. Sarah is one of my many cousins, and she's got a quick wit and sarcasm like no other. Sarah is not her real name. When we hang out, not even my friends mess with her, because they know she can tear anyone a new one, if you know what I mean. Sarah always gets me laughing and surprises me with her sarcasm and wittiness. Before the coronavirus outbreak, it was one of those take your kids to work days, and Sarah's mom, who we will call Aunt Jane, that's also not her real name, took Sarah to work with her. Aunt Jane owns and manages a family-owned store and was introducing Sarah to customer service before showing her what it's like to manage a place. So when Sarah gets older, she can decide if she wants to be a customer service assistant or something else entirely. So enter Sarah with a quick wit when an entitled Karen comes over to one of the cashiers and demands free gift cards because nothing in the store is good enough, and she wants something to actually use when coming back to this crappy store, as she puts it. When the Karen demanded to speak to Aunt Jane about the subpar merchandise, my aunt explained she doesn't give out free gift cards, especially to rude customers who insult her employees, and these employees are just doing their job and making honest money. Sarah later told me that the Karen had one of those squeaky, high-pitched voices that got higher the angrier she got. The Karen was middle-aged, but she sounded like a preteen boy whose voice just broke. When the woman demanded more stuff, Sarah was furious with the Karen, who was now insulting her mom. Aunt Jane is the kindest person you'll ever meet, and Sarah is fiercely protective of her. Sarah's a tiny firecracker, and this was when she launched, and I would have paid good money to watch her tear this Karen a new one. Ma'am, they say with age comes maturity, but with you, I really think it missed the mark. No one with your helium voice should be subjected to dealing with you on a normal basis, weekday or otherwise. So either buy stuff and leave, or just get out right now, okay? Sarah said that, by the way, word for word, and I died laughing when she told me about it. The entitled Karen was fuming, and she demanded the small employee who didn't know her place be fired. My Aunt Jane said to her, "This is my daughter. She doesn't work here, I can't fire her. And I wouldn't fire her for this either. She doesn't tolerate bullies, and a bully is what you are. Please leave now, ma'am." The Karen was fuming but left, and right after, Sarah texted me the entire story. I don't think the entitled Karen will be going to my Aunt Jane's store anytime soon, but either way, my cousin Sarah absolutely rocks. We honestly need more Sarahs in the world. I mean, that Karen was completely out of line. There was no reason for her to jump up there and actually ask for free gift cards. Like, seriously, who do you think you are? You gotta pay for those. There's no way you're getting that for free. And it must be nice to be the daughter of the business owner, and also just to be the business owner themselves, because then you can tell these people to get lost and never come back, and there's really nothing they can do about it. They're not gonna hurt your paycheck or anything like that. So honestly, good for Sarah and Aunt Jane, because it sounds like they're not gonna take that garbage from anybody coming in with that kind of attitude. My father-in-law is trying to exclude me from my own pregnancy, and has just been acting really weird all around ever since he found out that I got pregnant. Here's what happened. So after being engaged for 2 months, I found out that I was pregnant. Because it was unexpected and a very personal thing for me, I decided not to tell anyone but my fiance until the second trimester. We have now told family and close friends, who have shown nothing but support and excitement for everyone's first grandbaby. I still do not plan on announcing my baby to the world or on social media anytime soon. This is honestly just a personal preference. However, last night, we told my fiance's father, and to say him and I don't have the best relationship would be an understatement. For example, whenever my fiance isn't around, he'll make statements such as, "You have birthing hips," and other commentary about my looks, or mention my fiance's ex. To top it off, when we got engaged, he didn't congratulate us once, and instead bragged to his friends and family about how my fiance just got a new job and graduated from college. Last night, we told him I was pregnant, and he made the entire subject about himself and my fiance, saying, "Finally, a boy to continue our bloodline. I can't wait to watch him at sports practices." I mean, we don't even know the gender yet, and the entire time, my father-in-law talked about how my fiance is going to be such a great father, and not a single congratulations to me. And when his girlfriend mentioned buying baby clothes, he would cut her off and say, "Yeah, with what money? My money?" But what really irritated me was the fact that he got mad at me for waiting so long to tell him and wanted to know why he couldn't tell everyone about it and share it on Facebook. He even texted me about it right after I left. The entire time we were there, he referred to the baby as my fiance's and told us our lives were over and that we'll resent the kid for the rest of our lives. But at the same time, my father-in-law wants to watch the child for weeks at a time. He believes he is entitled to be in the room when the baby is born if he wishes to. When I told my father-in-law I only wanted my fiance in there, he told me that it wasn't my decision and I needed to include everyone in this experience. Let's just say my fiance and I have had long talks since then, and for my sanity, my father-in-law will not be seeing me or the child for a very long time. Your father-in-law sounds like a creep. First off, there's no reason for him to be making those kind of comments about your body. That's incredibly creepy and very weird, and that is something that definitely needs to be known between you and your fiance, especially if you haven't already talked about that. Also, the fact that he wanted to be there in the room while you were giving birth also really gives me the creeps. Like, it sounds like he wanted to be in there for ulterior motives. Maybe that's just me, but like, that's the vibe I'm getting. So I'm really glad you and your fiance came to the obvious conclusion that he is not going to be around you or the kid for a while. And obviously he's really hopeful that it's going to be a boy, but how is he going to treat that child if it's a girl? And if I were to make an assumption about this guy's character, you can bet he would probably mistreat your potential daughter in the same way he's mistreated you. He would dismiss you, act like you're not even in the room, and he would probably be creepy with her as well. So good for you for not only finding out exactly how your fiance's father is going to act, but also making the decision that nope, he is not going to be involved in your life or in your future kid's life in the slightest. And Entitled Karen demands that we sell her scratch-off lotto tickets even while the power and registers are down. Eventually, my manager gets fed up, causing him to go out there and tell her to get lost. Here's what happened. So my store had a blackout a few days ago. A full 3 or 4 blocks blacked out for at least 3 hours. My store was affected and the registers and lotto machines were down. We were turning people away unless they needed to use the bathroom. Some were regulars who understood the whole problem because their house was also in the area. Then there was a lady who has an addiction to lotto scratch tickets, and this lady was known to drop at least $500 on scratch-offs and stay in my store for hours. On this day, my manager decided to lock the front door and used his cell phone to call the district manager. We basically had to keep the door shut and posted a sign saying no services, which we thought was enough. But the entitled Karen shows up as I post the sign and lock the door to wait for the district manager to come. She is banging on the door when I tell her that there's been a power outage and that registers are down. The entitled Karen then screams, "Can't you just give me a few scratch tickets? I have money." She has literally no concept of this, I guess. I say to her, "I'm sorry, I can't do that. The registers are down." She rolls her eyes and starts to talk to me like I'm stupid. She says, "I have money." At this point, I'm getting annoyed. I say to her, "I am not letting you in. Please come back when we have power." I lock the door and I go back to moving some items to the drink fridge. She continues to bang on the door and I see my manager who tells her to leave, while she still screams that she has money and she wants to get scratch-offs. My manager immediately shot her down. She said, "Didn't she tell you the registers are down?" My manager is looking at me and has a rather hard expression. The entitled Karen acknowledges that yes, I did say that to her, but she then goes on to say that she just wants us to ring it back up when the power comes back on. The manager finally decides to make a final say. "We are done. No, you are not getting anything until the power comes back on." About an hour later, the power is back on and the registers are down. We had to call the help center and it took another hour for the registers to be restarted. And it's right about then that the entitled Karen comes back, banging on the door and pointing at the lights, screaming that the power is on and she can now buy tickets. My manager and I are now staring at each other. Okay, I'm done. He then walks outside and decides to tell her to leave. I can hear him say it. "You have a problem and you need to get help. Please stop coming here. We are not selling you tickets." She then storms off, complaining at us about how corporate is going to hear about how we treated her. The district manager was also in the parking lot as she walked off. He saw the whole thing and said that we handled it better than he could have. It really sounds like that lady has some kind of addiction. Like seriously, there's no reason to act like that at all. First and foremost, they're just scratch-offs. Like the chances of you winning anything substantial besides like maybe $50 is really slim, and it's really just not worth it. I mean, I personally think that gambling is really stupid and a giant waste of time. That's just me personally. So to see someone who has this much of an addiction and spends about $500 a week on scratch-offs is honestly a little bit sad. So hopefully this lady never comes back, because the way she was acting was incredibly crazy, and I can only imagine dealing with that on a daily basis. My boss warned me that I had an off night and that I need to pick it up or there could be consequences, and I'm now really worried that I'm about to get fired. Here's what happened. So I first want to start off that I feel so sick and I don't want to get fired. I enjoy waitressing and I like making people happy. So tonight was quiet enough. I had one table, a group of 14, and I was a mess tonight, and I wasn't focusing at all. I was forgetting small things and just was not on the ball at all. I had one table and I was messing up so much. Later on, my manager called me aside in private and told me tonight was not good enough. And she was right too. She mentioned things like drinks weren't being offered or cleared, steak knives weren't being served, too many other people were having to deliver the food, and I wasn't serving the food as I should be. She also said that newer staff are outperforming me. She also said in comparison to how I worked last Friday, it was not good enough. Apparently, I was the best performing waiter or waitress last Friday on a busy night out of all the staff, and I did everything brilliantly. On the ball with everything, upselling, remembering the small things, etc. I don't know what I did last Friday differently. I was so in control of everything and I was so efficient. I was running my own food, my own drinks, remembering everything that has to be done. My section was full and busy and all my tables were happy. None of them were waiting too long for anything. I usually have an issue with responsibilities clashing all at once, but not on Friday. I did so well and I let myself down tonight. I feel so sick. I asked if it was a warning and she said yes. I do not want to get fired. I'm clearly capable of managing my own section efficiently. I had a bad night and I'm so worried about the next few shifts. What should I do? Honestly, it just sounds like you had a bad night, and I think your manager is smart enough to know that you really do know what you're doing, and it's not like you're not cut out for the job. I mean, you had a really good night last Friday, so it's not like you can't do your job. Everyone has an off night, and as long as you're aware of it, then hopefully it'll be easier to just get up and try again. An entitled husband asked me to take photos of his family for Mother's Day for free, and while we're trying to get this organized, he freaks out and starts screaming at his entire family, stressing everybody out and honestly causing a lot of problems. So as a result, I enlarged his head specifically in every photo just to get back at him for his awful attitude. Here's what happened. So I first want to start off by saying that I'm not a professional photographer, but friends and family ask me to take photos for them all the time. I love portrait photography and I'm happy to do the favor, but sometimes people are really awful and annoying, and then it really grates my skin that I'm spending my evening and weekend doing a photo shoot and then processing these photos for free. So a few years ago, I had a really bad client. A colleague asked me to do a family shoot on Mother's Day. I knew I would have the morning to play with before going to see my own mom, so I accepted. It was going to be at a winery in the country, and my colleague offered to pay for me to join them for brunch as well, which honestly was just a bonus. We carpooled together, and it wasn't until we got there that I realized that it wasn't just going to be my colleague, as well as her husband and her kids. It was my colleague's husband's entire family. Brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, parents, and even both grandmas. 27 people in total. I'm immediately panicking about how long it's going to take to do this shoot and mentioned to my colleague and her husband that I have to leave in 3 hours to get back to my family's Mother's Day activities. My colleague's husband said it'll be fine, but I really just don't have a choice. I carpooled there. So I try and relax and just have a good time. Brunch goes on forever, and when we're finished, we only have an hour for photos. I figure that should be fine if cutting it a bit close, and I ask my colleague's husband to help me keep his family organized and to keep things moving. I plan out the normal shots with my colleague's husband, where everybody's together, there's family groups, there's kids and stuff like that, and then my colleague's husband starts asking for couple shots as well. Then he wants sibling shots. I eventually texted my family and let them know that I'm gonna be a little bit late, but hoping it won't be too bad because my colleague's husband will keep people moving. An hour and a half later and everyone is having a bad time. The kids are crying, it's taking forever to get any shots at all, and the reason being is that my colleague's husband is yelling at people, hurling commands and orders, barking, foaming at the mouth. It's incredibly awful. The winery people come over a few times and ask us to keep it down, but this guy starts yelling at them too. At this point, I'm just praying that they kick us out. I try telling my colleague's husband that I have to leave and that we can try again for photos another time. The family even tries to leave, but we are stopped. No, we must endure. When he tells his sons that he's going to knock the snot out of them if they don't stop crying, something just snaps inside of me. I stop trying to cheer people up. I stop trying to get fun photos or happy smiles. I just take the photos that we need so we can all just get out of there. When I eventually got home, I do what I can with these miserable photos. I combine different frames to get group shots where everyone looks happy. When that doesn't work, I touch up facial expressions so that people look less stressed out. I steal bits from candid shots earlier in the day. These are literally impossible masterpieces when I'm through with them. I spend hours and hours making sure these pictures are going to hang in living rooms forever. Then I go through every single photo featuring my colleague's husband, absolutely every single one of them, and just enough to be slightly noticeable, while also just enough to not make it look weird or awkward. I physically enlarge his head in every single photo, and I don't regret this form of petty revenge in the slightest. This right here is my immediate problem with carpooling. What if I don't want to be there anymore? What if the people I'm going with are actually crazy and I'm going to be stuck in some weird situation without any way of getting out of there? That's exactly what the original poster got stuck in. They were giving photos to these people for free, which was a big mistake, by the way, and they couldn't escape this situation even after their colleague's husband was freaking out. So I don't blame you for getting pictures and then saying, you know what, I'm out of here. Let's get out of here right now. The original poster also went on to say that they learned their lesson and they won't be doing any kind of work like that ever again for free. And I really don't blame them. Doing that much work, hours and hours of work just to try and make those photos approachable, would have been miserable just to do it on my own time and without getting any kind of payment. Because I can only imagine trying to keep my cool with some weirdo screaming at their family. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. An entitled vegan treats everybody in the restaurant I'm at like garbage. So I decide to get petty and I get revenge on this lady in the funniest way possible. Here's what happened. So I never really believed in the stereotype of the condescending, holier-than-thou vegan. I figured it was an invention of omnivores that simply like to make fun of vegans and project some kind of judgmental attitude on them. And then I met her. She came into this really solid Asian fusion restaurant that does carry out orders. She was talking to her friend, and the gist of the conversation was that she was appalled that she was even in this restaurant. The food didn't even count as vegan, since they also served meat. In fact, for the 10 minutes that I knew her, she basically had nothing nice to say about anyone or anything. It was pretty spectacular, listening to one person manage to say nothing nice for literally 10 minutes. She could have won a gold medal at the Jerk Olympics. I'd been standing in line patiently waiting to place an order, with one person in front of me. As she walked in, that person finished ordering, at which point she breezed by me like I didn't even exist. "I'd like a tofu lo mein, please." The woman behind the counter looked at me and I coughed politely. "I'm sorry, but I was here first." This elicited the biggest, most "how dare you waste my time" look in her eyes that I've ever seen, and she wordlessly stepped back. I ordered a chicken fried rice, and then she ordered her tofu lo mein, and we stepped back to wait for our food. 10 minutes later, the first order popped up, at which point this woman, mindlessly chatting with her friend about how much someone they both knew is a total jerk, swiped the order without thinking and without a thank you and stormed for the door in a desperate hurry to ruin other people's evenings somewhere else. My first thought was, isn't it likely that my order finished before yours? And I almost said it. And then I realized she was storming out with a meal she really didn't want. The next meal popped up about 2 minutes later. I grabbed it knowing there was a solid chance it was the tofu, and thanked the very nice woman behind the counter, and left without stopping to open it, afraid that if I wasted a second's time, that angry shrew might have stormed back in and corrected her oversight. So as a result, I triumphantly ate a tofu lo mein back at home that night. Well, to be honest, I ate the lo mein and I picked around the tofu. I don't know if that harpy returned demanding her correct meal, or if she just got home, realized it was chicken fried rice, and threw it away dejectedly. I just hope that she felt some level of misery that she seemed to enjoy forcing on everyone else around her. Honestly, I can't stand people like that. She not only cut you in line and tried to get ahead of you, but she also rolled her eyes as if you were the problem. You were literally standing there waiting to go next, and she just waltzed in front of you acting like she's better than pretty much everybody there. And it also sounded like she didn't really want to be at this restaurant in the first place. She was complaining the entire time that it wasn't strictly vegan, and honestly just acting like a jerk, talking loudly with her friend and then some. So good for you for getting back at her even in such a petty way. I find it really funny, and you know what? Based on her attitude, the fact that you could inconvenience her even just in a small way really is just a small moral victory. My sister is trying to blame me on my father's health issues, and I'm so offended, I seriously don't know what to do. For the last half a year, I've given up my apartment and my life in a huge way to help my dad while he was having some medical issues. Earlier in the year, he was in the hospital with pneumonia. He also is in the hospital to receive a pacemaker surgery. He is a widow as my mom unexpectedly passed away 2 years ago after a very brief health issue. She was younger than him, and it's been difficult on all of us. I have tried to help alleviate a lot of the burden by basically deciding to temporarily move in with him, even though in the past he has had narcissism issues and has been emotionally awful at times. I knew the situation would be temporary, and I figured it would be the best transition to eventually hire someone to help him out. My sister lives about 20 minutes away and comes over once a week, mainly just to have brunch with us. A lot of the times, she becomes very controlling and has very similar personality traits to my father. She tries to tell me what to do in regards to his care or just general house things, and tries to correct things that are not issues, even though she's around a very minimal amount of the time. This past week, my dad was back in the hospital and diagnosed with an early stage of congestive heart failure. The doctor seemed optimistic that there are things my dad can do to help alleviate this, but that it is a minimal stage. One of the big things my doctor mentioned was stress, which is something my dad tends to get a lot on his own. Today, my sister went to go see my dad in the hospital and wanted to talk to the doctor and then call me afterwards, even though I already had all of the medical information. She then sent me a bunch of messages basically telling me that we need to work on not getting him stressed out and that she knows he's part of the problem, but that I need to play a role in not getting him worked up. She basically was talking down to me as if I'm the reason that he gets stressed out, when in reality, I've been a huge part of his caretaking and helping alleviate that stress in his life. When my father and I have had arguments in the past, it's been due to him getting stressed out about something not necessary and me reacting to it and defending myself. She's had explosive arguments with him over the years, and I find it very hypocritical her talking like this. She made it sound like she's perfectly good with him and that I really need to work on my emotional reactions to him. I feel very attacked, as if she was trying to blame me for his stress levels and trying to act as if he's not the #1 issue of his own stress. She was sending me a bunch of messages, so I ended up calling her and telling her that ultimately he's in control of his own stress, and I've helped alleviate a lot of it by moving in with him. She then told me that this is always what I do, and I get defensive when I get called out on something. She then sent a bunch of other messages after hanging up on me and was very holier than thou and talking down to me as if I'm not the one with him 99% of the time, when she's there 1% of the time. She was extremely hostile to me on the phone and was also incredibly rude, saying that I can't just take ownership and just agree to this. She kept sending messages, so I just stopped responding because I didn't even want to continue arguing. I don't know what to do anymore. I feel as if I'm alone in my own family, as my mom was the closest person that I had. What should I do? Honestly, it really does sound like your sister's the problem here. She clearly has explosive arguments with her dad, and she causes a lot of problems in his life. So I really do take your side on this one. You're there 99% of the time, and she shows up every now and then for brunch. I mean, how can she possibly understand the nuance of what he's going through? It also doesn't help the fact that she is clearly in denial. Like, okay, she wants to try and claim she knows what's best for her dad. Maybe she should step up more and try and do more around the apartment. And that might even be a good solution to really see what she's all about. Maybe suggest and be like, okay, I've had my turn of helping dad out. How about I get my own apartment and you move in with him? And you can bet that her response to that would probably be to just not want to do that, because it doesn't sound like she actually wants to be involved in her dad's situation, but instead it really sounds like she wants to boss you and her dad around. And in my opinion, that is so unfair. My boss tries to micromanage me at work, so I decide to maliciously comply, and as a result, he gets in more trouble than he ever thought possible. Here's what happened. So this happened at work about 10 years ago. For some context, at the time of this incident, I had been working for a big box superstore for about 12 years, 5 of which as a department manager. I managed 3 areas: fresh meat, frozen seafood, and prepackaged deli, as well as breakfast meals. I supervised 2 part-timers and 2 full-timers. I reported to 3 supervisors, ranking in order of the assistant manager, a co-manager, and then the store manager. So on one particular Thursday morning, it was just myself and one of my full-timers. We'll call him Carl. Carl is not his real name. Carl was on duty until 3:00 p.m., myself until 4 p.m., and no one else after that. My other full-timer was on his day off. One part-timer was not available Thursday through Saturday, and the other was on vacation. Coverage was thin at best and would continue to be that way through the weekend. Having been super light on coverage coverage all week due to one of my guys being on vacation, the deli wall was looking a little thin. On this Thursday morning, I had to decide how best to prepare for the weekend. I knew that I would not have enough staff to commit a person to filling the deli wall on Friday or Saturday. As soon as I had finished breaking down Thursday morning's delivery with Carl, I began busting my butt to get the deli wall as full as possible before I left that day. That way I could have the guys focus on the fresh meat wall throughout the weekend, where I knew it would be super busy. While I did this, I entrusted Carl to fill the fresh meat wall for Thursday night's 4 p.m. rush. He was a very hard worker despite his age and health. I knew he could handle it on his own. Around 11 o'clock a.m., Carl had to take his lunch break, and while he was gone, my co-manager by the name of Scott, also not the real name, arrives to work and sees only me, and I'm filling the deli wall while only half of the fresh meat wall had been stocked thus far. Scott does not like this. He tells my assistant manager to have me swap the fresh meat wall as it's more important for that night's customers. I immediately seek out Scott to tell him why this was a bad idea, as well as why I am filling up the deli walls and not the fresh meats. But Scott doesn't care. He doesn't want to hear what I have to say. I am to do exactly as I am told. He does not want me to fill the deli wall, only the fresh meat wall. Did I mention that Scott is ex-military and still acts like he's enlisted? It's really annoying and it's really frustrating. So I decided to maliciously comply. I did exactly as Scott told me. After having only worked about an hour on the deli wall, I put all the freight back into the cooler and began filling up the fresh wall. Carl returned from lunch, confused to see me. I explained what had happened before taking my own lunch. Upon my return, the fresh wall was nearly finished, but I went ahead and helped Carl finish filling it. Soon, we were done and just topping it off throughout the rest of the afternoon. If someone bought a pack of beef, we both went back into the cooler to bring out another one. Same with the chicken, the pork, anything. We walked back and forth one package at a time, all the way up until Carl left at 3 p.m. and then I left at 4 p.m. As I walked past the deli wall on my way out, it already was looking so much worse than it had when I first arrived that morning. When I arrived at work at 7 in the morning on Friday morning, the first thing I did was walk past that deli wall. I was completely caught off guard to see that it had been filled. As I'm theorizing who could have possibly filled it, the assistant manager comes by and sees the puzzled look on my face. She comes over to me with a bit of a grin on her face, and the following is what she had told me had happened after I left the night before. Essentially, more and more of the wall emptied out as people shopped. It began to look like people were panic buying food. It had gotten that empty. Around 8 o'clock p.m., a market manager came in to do his own shopping, and I did not explain this before, but a market manager is who my store manager reports to. In other words, someone who has even greater authority than anyone in the store. The market manager goes to buy some lunch meat, and lo and behold, there's almost nothing on the shelf. He notices the entire wall is nearly bare, and he is furious. He then demands that Scott comes over to the deli wall immediately, and it was right about then that Scott gets over to the wall and gets chewed out. The market manager then orders Scott to get the wall stocked immediately. Scott is only now understanding the scope of his blunder. The wall is so empty that it will take a few hours to fill, and it is in this moment that Scott realizes how hard he messed up because he didn't check the schedule earlier and is now discovering that there is no one in the meat department that evening. So there is no one that he can delegate this task to. So guess who ended up having to fill the deli wall? That's right, Scott had no choice but to do it himself, and he didn't even get done until midnight. Remember, he had arrived just before 11 o'clock that same day, and he had to be back at 8 o'clock in the morning on Friday. Also, Scott is salaried, so he got no overtime for the extra hours worked. And by the way, Scott never did apologize for me for not trusting my judgment and for not listening to me, but he definitely learned his lesson. From that day forward, he did not try to micromanage me, and he just let me run my department unimpeded. That is honestly a funny story, and you know what? Scott got exactly what he deserved. If he just let the guy who runs this section do his thing, he would have had no problem with this being filled up, and he himself would not have had to do it in front of the guy over the entire store. I mean, how funny is that? It really drives me crazy when someone tries to micromanage me over something they have no idea about. So good for the original poster for maliciously complying, and hopefully Scott will stay out of your business in the future. Am I the jerk for saying that I'll be driving myself, as well as paying for my own room on an upcoming family vacation, just so I won't have to be forced to babysit my nephews? Here's what happened. So I was repeatedly stuck playing the part of helper and babysitter on family outings. I had to move out of my parents' house because I kept being forced to help watch my 3 nephews. Last year, we took a family vacation in the summer to the coast. I rode along with my parents and they paid for my hotel room, only I had to share that room with 3 rowdy boys place because my sister and her husband wanted a room to themselves. I was promised time to do my own things on my vacation, but instead, I ended up having to help with these kids. I complained to everyone about it and was reminded I was there for free. And then we pretty much just did only one thing I wanted to do, which was to take a tour of an art gallery. I really enjoy doing this because I'm at the coast, but the kids found it very boring. This year, my parents have a trip to the beach planned in June, and they assumed that I'd be riding along the same way as last year, but I refused. I said I'd be driving myself and paying for my own hotel stay to have my own room. And when I said this, my parents were shocked and tried to remind me of the cost. I said it was no worries. I've got a good job and a decently running car. I can more than afford it. And it's right about then that the whatabouts came into play. So I stated the previously listed things as to why I'm driving myself and paying for myself. I want to be able to enjoy this vacation as an adult and not be treated like a child like last year. For context, I'm 23 years old. My parents told my sister, and she called to blow up at me, that I'll be ruining the vacation if I'm off doing my own thing while she has to wrangle her 3 boys. I ended up yelling at her that last year, all she did was rope me into her mess. I didn't really get to do much of anything that I wanted to do, and I was treated like the bad guy for wanting to just go to an art gallery. I'm a grown man. I deserve my own vacation too. Now my sister is not speaking to me, and my parents are still trying to convince me to just ride along with them to keep the peace, but I'm still refusing. But the pressure is honestly getting to me. So this really begs the question, am I the jerk for not giving in? I know they'll have a pretty hard time when they won't have another person there to help, but I really think I deserve my own vacation. I don't think you're the jerk at all. You want to know why your sister's upset as well as your parents? Because now they don't have a free babysitter. Like seriously, that's the only reason they want you to ride along. If you carpool with these people, not only will you not have a way of getting home, but they're also just gonna slap you with these children and force you to babysit them. And I completely agree with you. That is unfair for you and your time. Driving yourself as well as getting a hotel really does seem like a logical conclusion if you want to try and enjoy this vacation at all. And clearly the sister just needs to be a better parent. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say it. Like maybe you should try to work on getting your boys in line and making them behave instead of just trying to ship it off to your sibling and being like, it's your problem now, you do it. Like, I'm sorry, that's completely inappropriate and you really should not do that to your sibling. I know for me personally, I would be very hesitant to even want to go on this vacation in the first place, because if you think the pressure is going to be bad over the phone, just wait until you're in the same area as these people. You can bet they're going to try and force these kids on you no matter what. Like seriously, these are her kids. They are her responsibility. They're not yours. And she doesn't care about the vacation in general. Your sister only cares about her vacation. She doesn't care what you're doing. She just wants to be free of those kids and not have to deal with them. That's honestly what's going on here. So if you do decide to go on this vacation, just realize there's probably going to be a lot of annoying pressure on your back. And you know what? You don't deserve that in the slightest. My entitled boss treats me badly, bullies me at work, and eventually drags me out the back door, slamming my leg in the door in the process. So I decide to get revenge by getting the police involved and slowly but surely destroying his business. Here's what happened. So this happened about 7 to 8 years ago. I was working at a small cafe, which was owned by a young woman in her mid-20s. She was a lot of fun to work with. I put my best foot forward, and it had a great sense of community. Almost every customer was a regular. It was a small town near a lot of car and boat repair shops, and directly next to us was a family-owned business. They were very religious and very kind. I loved the environment there and the customers. It was a regular thing to be given flowers and little things like that. Anyways, my boss didn't really have it in her to run the cafe. Business was great, but it took a lot of her time, and she was young and didn't want to be tethered to it. She sold it pretty easily, and the next owner, a big guy that we'll call Albert, that's not his real name, was gregarious and laughed a lot. He told a lot of jokes. He wanted me to stay on. I knew how to run the place and how to make all of the sandwiches and so forth. I thought this would be great, even if I would miss my old boss. The first day with Albert, he was immediately impatient with me. I couldn't do anything fast enough, and he hated the way I prepared the food. Usually, one person ran the till and took orders, and the other prepared said orders. It was a fast process with me and my old boss. With Albert, he messed up every time and blamed my short form way of writing our orders. So I started writing everything out, which he would still mess up somehow. He accused me of patronizing him and finally of sabotaging him. During close-up, he would berate me further. I dreaded coming to work after a while, which was too bad because he had me working every day but one. His wife was frequently there to help out, and she was always friendly and funny, and she really did like like me. Albert didn't treat me any better when she was around. He snapped at me a lot in front of our customers, and a few of the guys had talked to me about it. He treated her with a lot of contempt as well. One day, maybe after a month of this, I couldn't take it anymore. He called me stupid for some reason or another, and his reasoning really just didn't matter to me anymore. Up until that point, he talked to me like I was an idiot, but had not actually called me a name until now. I told him, "Look, buddy, I'm not your wife. You don't talk to me like that." And when I said that, he flipped out. He grabbed me by the apron and dragged me toward the back door, yelling at me to get out while also saying, "Who do you think you are?" I shouted for him to get his hands off of me, and while I was struggling to get my apron off, he shoved me outside. He still had a hold of my apron, then let go just as he stepped back and tried to slam the door. It was a heavy reinforced door with a panic door for unloading stock, alley access, and so on. My leg was still inside, and the minute he slammed it on me, I screamed and fell back. I think he knew that he messed up, but he shut the door on me and locked it. I was shaking with adrenaline and crying some, but more than anything else, I was angry. I got up from the ground, and the father of the family business next door had heard me shout and met me as I circled around to the front. I wasn't really that badly hurt, but because I was crying and shaking, he immediately assumed it was much worse than it really was. He put his arms around me and wanted me to come into his store, and I saw Albert watching us through the front window of the cafe. I laid it on thick. I cried even harder. I told the dad what happened in big gulping sobs. I held my leg and was overall pretty pathetic, and Albert saw the whole thing. After that performance, I went right home. I contacted my old boss before anything else. She still had to deal with this guy, and I didn't want to cause any trouble for her. She had pretty much finished up her business with him, save for a few details, and told me he had gotten belligerent with her on more than one occasion in a way that was entirely inappropriate. She didn't like the idea of me contacting the cops, but since I didn't see a way that this would actually impact her at this point, that's exactly what I did. The cops gave me a few options. I could press charges, and I was young and pretty and now unemployed, so I didn't really want to do that. Or the cops would go have a long heart-to-heart with him, and I thought that would be a pretty good start. They took pictures of the bruising on my leg just in case. I do bruise pretty easily, and it looked a mess for maybe a month or so. A couple days later, Albert starts texting me like mad. He wants to meet me and give me my last check, but I told him he could just mail it. He refused and kept insisting to come to the cafe in the morning before opening just so we could talk. This back and forth went on for way too long, so I cut him off and I told him to mail it to me or I'd come with the cops during rush just to get it. After my check, I decided I wanted my record of employment as well. There is no reason I needed it at the time, but I just wanted it. I dodged him for a few days until he sent me one, and it had correction fluid all over it, which is not allowed. I dodged him yet again until I got the replacement. I already had another job at this point, and I just wanted to needle him. 2 weeks after the dance in the doorway, I go back to the neighborhood and I stop by the garages and I shop to say hello to everyone. They're glad to see me and they wondered where I went. Albert told them that I quit to work elsewhere. They mentioned the cafe has been pretty slow lately, and it turns out the dad from the business next door had mentioned what happened to a few people already. So I share my side of the story with everyone. I found a way to bring it up in gory detail to everyone. So I stopped into each shop just to say hello to everybody in the neighborhood, just to show them the bruise on my leg from Albert. Maybe 6 months later, I'm in town and I come around to check on the cafe just to say hi to the guys. It was always tucked way back on the main road. Nobody driving by would notice it and think to stop in it. The local businesses around it were its lifeblood, and without that lifeblood, Albert had to actually close the cafe down pretty quickly. Everyone had stopped going. In a small way, it was really sad to see it closed, dark, and empty. I had a lot of fun there, and losing the cafe and moving on to another job basically meant I lost contact with all the guys. I think if I hadn't lit the fire in the first place, Albert would have eventually ended up ruining that place anyways, but it still feels delicious that I beat him to his own failure in the first place. What an awesome story that is. I'm surprised you didn't get some kind of lawyer involved or try to press charges in some kind of way. I mean, karma did favor you in the end, but I absolutely would have pursued this a lot further than just like a strong talking to. But also, it's so terrible that you got treated so badly. You loved your previous boss, you guys worked really well together, and then this guy comes in and just treats you like garbage. He bullies you around, he calls you these horrible names, and then he has the audacity to literally drag you out of the store and slam your leg into the door. Like, that's not okay. That's also illegal, and he should have have gone to jail in my opinion. I also feel really bad for the wife in this situation. It is truly awful that this is what was going on, probably behind closed doors as well. So good for you for getting revenge in a roundabout way. Going to everybody around that store really did tank his business, and honestly, he absolutely had it coming. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Am I the jerk for ambushing my sister at her wedding reception, all because she told me her wedding was child-free, when in reality it actually wasn't? So my sister and I are not very close. We have a good relationship, at least before this all happened. My sister got married recently, and she told me that the wedding was child-free. I have a daughter, and I asked my sister if she could come, but she said to me, "Sorry, but we're sticking to the rules." I managed to arrange for my daughter to stay at a friend's house for a couple of days, since the wedding was in a different city. So I went to the wedding and I saw quite a few older children, including my other siblings' kids. And I know what you're thinking. This sounds like I should have known from before from my other siblings, but I never thought to ask if they're bringing their kids or anything like that. I did ask my brother at the wedding, and he was told the child-free limit was only for really young kids, the ones that are very disruptive. So it was pretty obvious that my sister lied to me about not bringing my daughter. We went through the ceremony, and towards the end of the reception, I pulled my sister aside and I told her that she had completely lied to me and there were plenty of other kids here. She looked pretty uncomfortable and said it wasn't a big deal, but I replied that I deserve an apology, and so does my daughter at some point. My sister then got mad and said that I was ambushing her at her own wedding, and it's her and her partner's choice on what they do. We eventually ended the conversation there and went off to talk to other people. She sent me a text message later saying I was being selfish and I'm the one that should be apologizing to her and her husband, especially for making a big deal out of this. I will admit that I sent a not so nice text message back to her about her caring more about aesthetics other than people. Now it's sort of blown up within our family. So am I the jerk for supposedly ambushing my sister at her wedding, all because she wouldn't let my kids show up to her wedding? Honestly, it kind of sounds like she was targeting your daughter. She clearly had no other problem with other kids being there, but for some reason she didn't want your kid there. And that is really, really toxic in my opinion. And if I was in your shoes, I absolutely would have done that too. I mean, how is it that all the other kids are welcome to this wedding, but your kid specifically, oh no, we can't have her come along? That would simply be too much. There's literally no indication that your kid wouldn't behave any better than any of the other kids. And it really doesn't sound like there was any big difference in ages in the slightest. So personally, I don't think you're the jerk on this one. You didn't do anything wrong by talking to your sibling, and you waited until the end of the night to talk to her in the first place. And I am right there with the original poster. Their sister absolutely needs to apologize to you as well as your daughter. An entitled boyfriend gets upset when we tell him to get lost when he's trying to visit and spend some quality time with his girlfriend in the hospital. The entitled boyfriend then tries to impersonate the patient's father, but I wasn't having it, and eventually I shut him down completely in the funniest way possible. Here's what happened. So I used to work at a very nice private hospital where the place looked like a hotel. The food was great and the service was unrivaled. We were voted best private hospital in the country, and this happened quite a few times. And all around, people were happy and they were getting taken care of. The nurses were mostly old school, stern but very passionate about patient care, with no time for anything that stops them from doing their job. My job was to focus on marketing and complaints. And to be honest, I didn't have a lot of work on the complaint side, but every now and again something would come up. If there was an incident, the RNs would usually come and warn me to expect something and give their side of the story. One morning as I got to work, one of the nurses was waiting at my door to update me on an incident the previous night. There was an 18-year-old patient who had a small operation, but was prone to dizziness and fainting. Now, slip and falls are a big thing in hospitals, and these incidents get monitored very closely. Since she was a slip and fall risk, they moved her into a private room right in front of the nurse's station so that she can be monitored throughout the day and night. One night, the tattoo-cladded 20-something-year-old boyfriend comes to visit and forgets that this is in fact a hospital and not a hotel. The old-school stern nurse realized something is amiss when the room's doors were closed, and after she pushed open the door, the curtains around the bed were also drawn. Seeing privacy takes second priority to a patient's healing and safety in a hospital, the old-school nurse wasn't having any of this. She pulls the curtains open, pulls a boyfriend out of the hospital bed, and gave them both a talking to. The tattooed boyfriend left soon afterwards, apparently furious that his evening was ruined. Sure enough, 2 hours after the nurse visited my office, I get mail from the patient's father detailing how his daughter's privacy was invaded the night before, and how she had a private conversation with with her boyfriend and how they were unfairly treated by a nurse. I was surprised that an older gentleman would write an email to a hospital with so many spelling errors, including such a complete lack of punctuation. But the email address that they sent it on, something like tattooguy@gmail or something like that, was a total giveaway as to who the real author was. Now, technically, I was just able to reply to the email detailing our experience and side of the story. However, sharing private patient information on an email to be unconfirmed is bound to get me in serious trouble. So I did what any sane and perhaps slightly malicious person would do. I called document control and I asked them to pull the email address on file for me. And this one happened to belong to her mom. I forwarded the email to her, mentioning that I received the following email from her daughter's father, but since she is the only contact person on file, we need to stick with the person that we have permission to contact. I then asked her if she could share our response with him. I then detailed what the nurse told me about the patient being a slip and fall risk that requires constant monitoring, about the boyfriend visiting, about the door and curtain being closed, and the nurse catching them in the hospital bed together. I apologized on behalf of the nurse for invading their privacy, but explained that open doors are protocol to ensure a patient's safety, and our main priority is getting a patient safe, healthy, and back home as soon as possible. I ended the mail with the contact details and invited her to contact me if she had any further questions. Well, if the patient didn't know about the incident, they definitely knew now. I am told the daughter was well behaved for the remainder of the time, and the boyfriend didn't stop by once during the rest of the patient's stay. So, lesson learned. Don't include your parents' details on your hospital file as your main contact details if you don't want them contacted. Don't try to catfish a hospital employee, and respect a hospital for what it is, a place of healing and not a hotel. The boyfriend in this story is a complete idiot. Why on earth would you try to lie and be like, I can't believe you treated my daughter this way? Like, what were you thinking? You were clearly trying to do something pretty sketchy and nefarious, and you got caught in the act. Instead of just running away with your tail between your legs and saying, hey, let's catch up when you're better, you instead tried to impersonate this lady's parents. Like, seriously, that's the dumbest thing you could have done, because it sounds like this employee knows exactly what they're doing, and you're not about to pull a fast one on them. Am I the jerk for telling my parents I won't be getting a traditional part-time job? Here's what happened. So my parents recently have been telling me to start making my own money to pay for unneeded stuff like expensive clothes or nights out with my friends, which is fair enough. They told me to get a traditional part-time job, working at a store or a restaurant or babysitting or whatever. I decided that those sounded time-consuming and boring, so I decided to utilize my good taste in clothing to make money in a more hands-off way. I used money that I have already, remnants of birthday money mostly, to go to a thrift store and buy clothing I knew would be in trend right now and sell them, either online or to people I know, then withdraw some of the money from personal spending and put most back towards buying more stuff. This is optimal because now, as of a month after starting, I'm making pretty good money, and this is for very little work. I mean 1 to 2 hours every weekend at a thrift store, and then another 1 to 2 hours to pose for photos modeling with the clothes and the items, and then I post them online. And even that little amount of work is something I find really fun. So all in all, it seems better than working longer hours at something I would find boring for similar pay. My parents are angry because I took what was supposed to be a teachable moment about hard work and just ruined it for them by finding a way to make money that's not hard work at all. They demand in order for me to learn about hard work, I need to quit doing this and get an actual part-time job. I see no logical reason to. As I said, what I have going is quicker and much more enjoyable than a part-time job, and this is all for similar amounts of money earned. To put it simply, why would I work more hours doing something I like less just for the same amount of money? It sounds irrational, right? They think that I'm being a jerk and that I'm just being lazy here. I agree that there's a certain amount of laziness involved, but if my system works, it works. So am I the jerk for not getting a part-time job in the way that they wanted me to? Honestly, you're not the jerk at all. You really don't have to get a part-time job that, by the way, you're probably going to hate just to experience and understand the working world. You obviously make enough money in comparison to a part-time job. Why would you go to that if you could just make that money here? Plus, what you're doing takes a lot more motivation and ingenuity, and this could very easily become a business for you, like you never know. In fact, I'm really surprised that your parents aren't just cheering you on more. If I had a kid who was doing this to make money, I would not only be super impressed, but I would also be like, wow, do more of this. In fact, if you doubled your time doing this, you very easily could make double your money. So honestly, you are not the jerk. Your parents are being silly, thinking that you need a soul-crushing part-time job just to appreciate what it means to work hard. Am I the jerk for demanding that my sister pay for childcare so that I can attend her wedding. So my sister's wedding is in a couple of months. She recently sent out invitations, and I was invited as a regular guest, but not as a bridesmaid or a maid of honor, since we live a state apart, and obviously there's a certain level of involvement and time that goes into being part of the bridal party, which I completely understand. I want to be there for my sister, and obviously I'd like to see her get married. The problem is that I'm a single mom. My son is 6 years old, and when he's not at school, I need to be home watching him. So being out for hours at a time isn't really in the cards for me right now. My sister's wedding is also child-free. Since it's taking place in her state, I'd need to commute, and I'd probably have to be gone from my house for 2 full days. I can't have family watch my son since they'll all be at the wedding, and I don't really have friends who can babysit for 2 days. I contacted my sister and asked if she'd be willing to let my son come to the wedding with me, and explained to her that he couldn't be left alone so young, and that I didn't have anyone to watch him. She responded by telling me her no children policy was strict, and she wasn't making any exceptions. I explained my situation again, and said I would need some form of childcare or to bring him with me. I then asked her if she would pay for me to hire a nanny or a babysitter to watch him. She then got offended and said children and weddings are both parts of life, and I need to just figure it out. It's my kid and my problem, which is true, but this is her wedding, and she's making it a problem by not allowing me to bring my kid. I told her she could either pay for my childcare or I wouldn't be going to her wedding, which all she did was call me ridiculous and entitled. She said she shouldn't have to pay for my child, and that part of being an adult is knowing how to take care of that kind of thing. I think that's ridiculous. Money is tight. Childcare is expensive. I can't magically afford for someone to watch my 6-year-old, and most people would just let me bring him to the wedding. My sister says she's definitely not paying for childcare, and also said, well, I guess you're just not coming to the wedding then. My whole family is mad at me for not being there for my sister. So it begs the question, am I the jerk for telling my sister she needs to pay for childcare, or I'm not going to her wedding? To be completely honest, I really do think you're the jerk in this situation. Your sister is getting married. You really think she has time to try and set up childcare for specifically you? She is already stressed out about trying to get this wedding together, and here you are trying to throw a wrench in the wheel and saying to her, if you don't pay for my child's care, I'm not going to your wedding. Like, that is already so ridiculous. The wedding is probably really expensive as well. Do you really think she has money to spare to pay for your kid? And your sister is 100% right. You are an adult. It's time to figure this out. And if you can't figure it out, well then you just don't go. You send her a message saying, hey, I can't leave my son for that long. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be there. I wish you the best, or something like that. You don't go back and be like, I'm not going to your wedding and it's your fault. Like, no, that's not how it works. You can either find a babysitter and show up and be there for her wedding, or you can stay home with your kid. That's the end of it. It's nobody else's fault that you can't figure that out. And it's also nobody else's fault that you can't afford it. So honestly, I think you need to drop the entitled attitude. Saying stuff like, most people would just let me bring them, is not going to help your case at all. You need to accept, and you probably already knew this ahead of time, that no children are welcome at the wedding. And you can either respect that and find a way to make it work, or you can make the adult decision and decide to not go. My entitled sister is making my life a living nightmare in my own home, causing so much chaos, being incredibly lazy, and refusing to get a job to pay her own way. And after 6 months of dealing with her garbage, I am simply at the end of my rope, and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I bought my house back last year. My mom lives with me because of health issues, and when she found out my sister got kicked out of her apartment, my mom asked me to let her come and live with us. For starters, my sister and I were never close. In fact, in high school, she would often make me walk home. My mom and I were told that she would need help finding a new place to live, and she would need to find work to move back out. While this has been the biggest lie I've ever been told, she has been living in my house for about 6 months now, and it has been an absolute nightmare. Every rule I set, she has broken. For starters, she would trash my house, and then yell at me to clean it up, because she claims she's the guest and she should not have to clean. She also doesn't pick up her dog's waste, and her dog would even go on the neighbor's driveway, and then the neighbor would complain to me. And when that happens, my sister would then start screaming at the neighbor. So needless to say, my neighbors are now starting to hate me. My sister also eats all of the food in the house, which then leads to me complaining that there's no food for me and my mom. I have seriously lost 30 pounds since she started living here. When my mom and I cook, she'll complain that it's gross, and then demands that we go buy something else. And when we ask her why she doesn't just cook the dinner herself, she will then go back to screaming that she's a guest and she should not have to cook dinner. Now, she lost her job a month ago and started demanding that I give her money when I told her I can't do that because most of my money goes to bills and whatever's left over for groceries or animal care or stuff like that. She starts screaming because she needs money for makeup and face wash because she claims she can't look like trash like the rest of us. Now, for me personally, I don't have a problem with buying this stuff for her, especially if the makeup and the face wash was like maybe $20 or something like that. But no, she wants the ones that are $30 or $50 because they are the only one that work for her. She is constantly attacking me and my mom all the time, and she laughs like a hyena when she makes my mom have a breakdown. And I also really fear for the safety of my pets. My mom and I are not wanting to kick her out because we don't know what will happen to her, and most of our family want nothing to do with her. If next month comes around and she hasn't changed at all, I may have to kick her out myself. We don't know what else to do. We are starting to not like coming home, and I love my home. But with my sister being there, she's starting to make me want to sell it just so I can get a new one so that I can get out of here. What should I do? What a horrible situation to be stuck in. First off, you have this new house that you bought, and you were probably excited to live in it with your mom. And then your sister comes around after getting kicked out of her apartment and literally makes your life a living nightmare. Like seriously, let's talk about some of the things that she does. First and foremost, the fact that she's saying she's a guest in your house and she shouldn't have to cook or clean or anything like that is honestly ridiculous. Of course she should have to clean and cook. What is she talking about? Your sister has literally lived there for 6 months. It's time to step up and do something in the house, not just laying around and expecting everything to be done for you. That is so unfair for you as well as your mother. Her behavior is absolutely inappropriate, and it's honestly kind of no surprise that she got kicked out of her apartment. I mean, look at the way she's acting. This is probably why she got kicked out. This also makes me question if the original poster knew about their sister's behavior. Like, did they know ahead of time that she would be an absolute nightmare, that she would make everybody's lives really miserable, and she would be this lazy, freeloading person that's currently living in the original poster's house? Like, please tell me you didn't know that ahead of time. I mean, don't get me wrong. I totally understand that this is your sister and you absolutely want to try and take care of family. But if you knew that she was acting like this in previous living situations, as well as the fact that the other members of your family don't want anything to do with her, then this was seriously a bad move of letting her live with you at all, because this is now what you have to deal with. So if I was in your shoes, I would absolutely be giving her an ultimatum. I would be saying, hey, if you want to live here, you got to straighten up your act, start paying rent, and carrying your weight around this house. It's not fair for me as well as our sick mother to have to give you money and take care of you at the drop of a hat. Get a job and pay your way, or you can get out. And yeah, personally, I can totally understand your hesitation. You don't want her to get kicked out because you're not sure what's going to happen to her. But seriously, that's not really up to you. If your sister wants to ruin her life, that really is on her. I mean, you tried to help her and said, hey, live with me and mom, let's figure this out. But she straight up lied to you by saying she's going to get a job as well as find a new place to live. So personally, if I was in your shoes, there's no way I would sell my house, but instead I would tell my sister that if she wants to live here, she either needs to fix her attitude and get a job, or she needs to simply get out. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. An entitled Karen demands that I hand over my Nintendo Switch, claiming that her daughter wants it more and that I shouldn't have it because I'm a grown man. Here's what happened. So to start things out, I sat down on the train, and a little girl sits down next to me with her Karen mom sitting across from her. About 10 minutes after the train starts to move, I was starting to play a game on my Nintendo Switch. The little girl sees it and asks if she can play, and I said yes, but I told her to ask her mom first. The mom says yes, so I just let her play on it. I also ask what stop they're getting off at, as I'm getting off a few stops before the end of the line. Eventually, after about an hour, I'm coming very close to the station, and I said to her, I'm sorry, sweetie, I'm getting off here. And the little girl hands back my Nintendo Switch with a big smile and even a bigger thank you. It's been nice and quiet for an hour, and it was fantastic seeing the happiness on the little girl's face while she was playing on my Nintendo Switch. But that's right about when it all went downhill. The mom sitting across from her turned into an entitled Karen at the drop of a hat. This entitled Karen then says, my daughter is having so much fun with the Switch. Can't she just keep playing? Now when she said this, I said, no, I'm sorry, I'm getting off at the next stop. But it's right about then that this Karen starts to go nuclear. She shouts out, my daughter is having fun with it. What's a grown man like you doing playing with a children's toy? Just give it to her right now. I said to her, I have given it to her for the past hour to play with. with. And by the way, this is all while you've been playing on your phone. The Karen then screams at me and says, if you gave it to her, then it's hers. It's not yours anymore. And when I heard her say that, I was seriously baffled. I then interjected and told her, ma'am, she was borrowing it from me. Have you ever heard of the concept before? Thankfully, I saw my stop coming up. And without further ado, I picked up my bag with the switch packed nicely away and then turned to the little girl and said, you seem like a nice, well-behaved little girl. Please don't turn out like your mother. I then walked off the train after getting the last word in. I breathed in the sweet air of freedom and then met my mates in the pub where I told them this story. And the best part about this is that this is England. And until today, I thought those Karen types of people only existed in America. But boy, was I completely wrong. Yeah, that lady was seriously crazy. Like, first off, you need to take care of your kid on the train, and you should not rely on strangers to keep them entertained. Like, it is seriously not the original poster's fault that the kid was bored and looking at his Nintendo Switch. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with having a Nintendo Switch and being an adult. It is literally one of the best consoles out there right now, and it's something you can enjoy on the go like the original poster. So that statement from the entitled Karen was just off the bat really uncalled for. But also, how insane do you have to be to seriously think that just because someone borrowed your Switch, they now somehow own it? Like, seriously, if this entitled Karen really wanted her daughter to have a Nintendo Switch, then she would pony up the money just like anybody else. So good for the original poster for not bending to this weird entitled Karen, because based on what we know, she absolutely does not sound like a good parent. Today, I messed up by going on a date with my friend, resulting in her using me for a free meal. Here's what happened. So I went on a date with one of my friends whom I will call Sarah. Sarah is not her real name. I also attend the same university as Sarah. I've always known that my friend has a thing for me, but I've always been reluctant to go on a date with her because I genuinely value our friendship and felt putting romance there would just mess things up. Well, about a week ago, I was hanging out with Sarah and our other mutual friend as they listened to me complain about my unfortunate dating history. The mutual friend then put out the idea of a date between Sarah and I. He did this mainly just to make the room temporarily awkward, but it led to a conversation where I essentially asked Sarah for a date. For the days leading up to the date, both Sarah and I became a lot more flirty, and I have to admit, I was kind of excited for the date itself. 2 days ago, I picked up Sarah, and we went to a fairly fancy restaurant. When the waiter came, I ordered my food. She then ordered basically 3 separate meals, and I didn't know what to say or how to question why she ordered so much food. When I finished my food, she barely ate half of one plate, and then she said that she wasn't actually hungry because she ate lunch right before she left her place. I then asked her why she ordered 3 meals, and she said one is for her mom's dinner since she always wanted to try this restaurant out, and the other meal is for her to eat with her mom during dinner. I then told her that I think it's nice that she got dinner for her mom. It's cute that she would do that, to which she responded by saying, I should be thanking you since you're paying for it. I had told her that I would pay for the date, but I definitely never agreed to pay for her mom or her to get dinner when we had only gone out for lunch. The meal was expensive, but I would have been fine paying for her if she actually ate all 3 meals. Instead, it just all kind of felt really wrong. The rest of the date was absolutely ruined for me, and I was pretty much checked out of this date, and I was just going through the motions. After I left her at her place, I went radio silent on her, as I was still annoyed by what she did. Today, I wanted to just tell her that I think we should just go back to being friends, but as I opened our chat message with her, I read a message that she sent me shortly after our date. She was basically thanking me for the date, and then went on to pour out her feelings for me, and say that she has loved me for years, and the date was like a dream come true for her. I had to drive over to her place to try and be as gentle as possible, that the feelings are definitely not mutual, which did result in her crying and screaming at me as to why I was flirting with her before the date, and why I even asked her out on the date. And needless to say, I honestly felt horrible after that interaction. I personally would not feel horrible about saying, you know what, I don't want to date this lady. She literally used you for 3 different meals, and that is totally unfair for you and your wallet. Like, what was she thinking? Did she really think that this was okay? She could just order 3 different meals and say, it's okay, he's gonna pay for it. And did she really think that wouldn't leave a bad taste in your mouth? Like, if that happened to me, I would not feel bad about turning her down. And if she asked me why I would have asked her out on the date, I would have said to her, I don't know, maybe I thought you were only gonna buy something for yourself and not for your mom and yourself later on. I mean, that really is super inconsiderate in my opinion, and that really would be a deal breaker. Like, that's a horrible first impression. So you didn't mess up. If anything, you probably dodged a really weird person who was just gonna use you for money and for food. mood. And personally, I don't think you deserve that in the slightest. Am I the jerk for wanting my wife to stay up with me during a road trip just so she can talk to me and try and keep me company? Here's what happened. I want to start off by saying I'm writing this right now at the hotel where I'm at because I'm genuinely at a loss for words. I don't think I'm in the wrong, but at the same time, she looks really upset at me. For starters, my wife, myself, and our 2-year-old are going on our first road trip up to California. We rotate driving in shifts, but the problem is that when I was driving, my shift fell during the night, and so I was feeling really lonely and bored as I was driving. I'm not someone who can be left to his own thoughts very well, and I need people around me. I thrive on energy and excitement. My wife is a bit of the opposite. She is generally fine with being left alone and can sit quietly for hours and hours upon end. The problem is that around 11 o'clock p.m., I was driving and my wife and our son was in the back seat. I was feeling isolated, so I shook her awake, but then our son woke up. And well, you can probably guess what happens next. Once he quieted down, my wife began quietly blowing up at me about how much of a jerk I am. I told her that it wasn't fair for her to just sleep like that, and it made me feel like a driver. She then said that she doesn't force me to stay awake or engage with her, but I told her that that's a cheap blow because we're not the same people, and I kept my mouth shut while she was driving because I know she doesn't like distractions, even though it bothered me terribly. So the least she could do is to stop being selfish and help keep me sane. Despite my perfectly logical answer, she apparently got emotional and then started whisper screaming some garbage about how raising one toddler is hard enough and that she didn't know there was another one in the car who needed his whims catered to every moment. And at that point, since she got rude, I decided to disengage. Now our whole trip is falling apart and she's making me out to be the bad guy. So am I the jerk for wanting my wife to stay up with me during a road trip just so she could try and talk to me and keep me occupied? First off, I want to say that yeah, you are absolutely the jerk. Your wife has probably been driving all day and she just wanted to sleep. You've been relaxing, saying nothing, basically had every opportunity to rest and get ready for your shift. And instead of driving that shift and keeping quiet to let your wife and your son sleep, you decided that everybody's got to be awake. And that's so unfair for your wife. She is not an object. She is a living, breathing person who has needs, and right now she and your son need some sleep. But your selfish attitude really just completely spoiled the mood. She is 100% in the right, and you are absolutely wrong. And also, anytime someone's like, I'm perfectly logical and she's just too emotional, that's like a clear-cut sign that you're just toxic and that the other person is probably absolutely right. And in this case, that is exactly what's going on. And it's ironic that you would call her emotional and you're just some logical person when logic would say, hey, my wife has been up all day driving. Maybe I should let her sleep and be able to get some rest. But no, you clearly had to have somebody with you all night just so you can be awake. Like, that is utter BS, and that just does not stand in the slightest. I mean, you clearly got pretty emotional when she called you a giant toddler, which, by the way, that's exactly how you're acting. So if anybody ruined your vacation, congratulations, it's you. The way you acted was completely out of line, and your wife absolutely had every right to sleep. I mean, just imagine how she's gonna be during her shift if she literally didn't get any sleep that night and was then asked to drive the car. That's not gonna happen. That's incredibly unsafe, and it's selfish and very self-centered of you to think that this is appropriate in any situation. Am I the jerk for not wanting to share my father's $500,000 estate with the rest of my siblings? So my father gave me his entire estate. Everything was willed to me only, leaving out my 5 siblings. They aren't happy about this, and they are demanding that I split it equally, while also claiming that this is what dad would have wanted. I have been made out to be a greedy villain to our extended family, as they post on Facebook about it constantly. I am the youngest of 6 children, and I have been financially caring for my father for over 7 years now. I also care for an older disabled sibling. My father was very fortunate to own a house, as well as multiple vehicles, and had a decent life insurance payout. I was on the deed to the house prior to his passing. The total inheritance for me was around $500,000 in the house, $60,000 across a couple of vehicles, and $200,000 for his insurance policy, with about $20,000 of that being used for funeral expenses. It was mere hours after he passed away when my siblings began asking about who would get a certain vehicle. My oldest sister also talked about fixing up a few things in the house and putting it on the market to sell it a little bit later. They had no idea I was on the deed for years. Now, the 4 siblings who are upset do not live near us. 2 didn't come to the funeral, and they only visit about once every year for a couple of days. I was aware the entire time that I would be getting everything. It had been this way in our family since I was in my 20s. I still have paperwork from previous life insurance plans that lists me as the payout. My father believed me to be the most responsible, that I would also care for my disabled brother after he was gone. They were quite upset to see I've known this for years and didn't mention anything. I've turned to my disabled brother for support, but he can't really comprehend what's going on, nor does he really care. They have all reached out to lawyers, but mine says everything is pretty solid, since I have immense amount of documentation to show that this was his decision for almost a decade. However, I feel like I'll ruin my family if I keep it to myself. I own a small business and I make a decent living for myself, so I've paid my dad's expenses for years and allowed him to pay his debts instead. I don't see why I should have to share with family members who were never around, nor did anything for him. I've sacrificed relationships, I've sacrificed having children, all of this just so I could take care of my dad. He's been my number one my whole life. So am I the jerk for not sharing in my father's estate with the rest of my siblings who clearly were never there for him? So in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk at all. Your siblings showed their true colors by not only not showing up to his funeral, but also not being involved at all when he was clearly in need of help. Like you put it best, you gave up everything so you could take care of your dad. And that is seriously a very noble thing to do. And as long as you have that paper trail and you've got that evidence to say, hey, he did this like a decade ago. This isn't something he did right before he passed away, and it certainly wasn't anything that you influenced. If you have all of that evidence, I honestly don't think you're going to be in any kind of trouble. At least that's me. I think you should talk to your lawyer no matter what. But all in all, I wouldn't blame you if you kept this to yourself. You have sacrificed a lot of time and effort just to take care of your dad, and you can bet he's probably eternally grateful for your sacrifice. And I really would just ignore your extended family on Facebook. They're idiots. Because where were they when he was having financial troubles for nearly 7 years? You were the only one to step up and say, okay, I'm going to help you. I'm going to use my small business to try and keep everybody afloat. And you did just that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all, in my opinion. And it's something that you absolutely should feel proud of. Not to mention that you were also helping take care of your disabled sibling, something that the rest of your siblings didn't even want to try to do. So if you do decide to keep the estate all for yourself, I personally would not blame you or think that you're the jerk. You did everything you could to take care of your family, and you made sacrifices for your family, as well as any future family that you might have, just so your dad and your disabled sibling could have some kind of life. I mean, look at the way they acted right after he passed away. Literally hours after he was gone, they were already trying to arrange who got what vehicle and what they were going to do to the house just to try and make a pretty penny. And I also really don't think this is the case of like your dad picking favorites or anything like that. You were the one who stepped up to the plate and helped him out. You were there and cared for him for over a decade. Also, everybody else in the family is fully grown and can support themselves. I mean, it doesn't seem like they have no money and that they're completely helpless. So hopefully this all works out for you, because your dad clearly wanted you to have his estate, and it really does not sound like your dad wanted to split it up between your siblings at all. An entitled Karen confronts me outside my new house, guilt-tripping me into selling my house to her son who wanted it instead. And I'm honestly blown away by this level of entitlement. Here's what happened. So for a bit of backstory, back in March, my partner and I bought a house. This was a big deal for us, and we're so glad we managed to pull this off, especially right before the pandemic got really bad. It's a livable fixer-upper, and the lady that lived here before bought it in 1967 and was the only owner before us, and she made no updates in that time. It keeps us busy, and that's worked out really well being home so often. But this is right about when the entitled Karen of this story steps in and basically ruins my day. In the month of May, my big project was pulling up some nasty bushes that had taken over a huge chunk of the front side yard. It was hot and I was very sweaty. I'm digging out roots and throwing branches away, and as I'm right up front and making a pretty drastic change to the yard, people obviously did notice. Most neighbors stop by and say a quick hello from the car and just drive away, but not this entitled Karen. The entitled Karen pulls up in a shiny black Suburban from the opposite side of the road. She parks the wrong way and rolls down her window. I would say she's in her 50s or 60s. I stand up and pause my music. The entitled Karen then shouts out, "Hey, did you buy this house?" I respond to her by saying, "Yep, we actually just moved in last month." She then inquires if I knew the family before moving in, and I say to her, "Oh, that sold it to us?" "No, not really. We just got lucky that they chose us, I guess." Now, I was just trying to be nice, but also kind of off-put that she's asked none of the typical neighbor questions. I mean, we made a good offer and we got the house. The entitled Karen then says, "Yeah, my my son really wanted this house. He grew up in this neighborhood, you know. I explained to her that, houses move really fast nowadays. But the Karen interrupts me and says, he spent his whole life in this area, and he really deserved to stay in this neighborhood, you know. And after I said that was too bad, I was starting to get a little bit weirded out. Then this entitled Karen drops the weirdest question she's asked so far. She says to me, so how much did you offer? Now, for me, not wanting to give her details, I basically just said it was over the asking price and that we were very proactive. But the entitled Karen said that her son really wanted that house. Now, at this point, I'm feeling very awkward about this whole situation, and I'm just looking to shoo this lady along. I say to her, yeah, I'm sure most houses will go up for sale around here. This entitled Karen then says, well, that doesn't help him now, does it? He had his heart set on that house. At this point, I just shrugged my shoulders and decided to resume my root cutting to try and give her the message that I don't want to talk. You're probably just flipping it. He would have loved it. But I chimed back in and said, no, we're not. We're staying here long term. But this entitled Karen didn't believe me. She just said, yeah, right. At this point, she doesn't leave. I'm wondering if I should just go inside or something. She keeps looking at me, expecting me to say something, but I just keep cutting at the roots. The entitled Karen then says, is it just you or did your family help you get it? I responded by getting pretty short in my tone by saying that my partner and I bought it together. The entitled Karen looks over my yard and says, my grandkids would have loved the yard. A loved yard makes a house a home, you know. At this point, I wasn't even looking up. I said to her, well, my dogs will love it too, especially once I'm done. The entitled Karen sounded shocked. She said, seriously? But I just scoffed. I pulled my root out, I threw it on the pile, and I could feel her eyes watching me. Ready for all of this to be done, I looked at her and I said, well, have a good day. Then with a last and final glare, she let out an angry scoff and she sped off, leaving a quite annoyed and bewildered me in all my dirty glory, mulling over what in the world had just happened. Did this lady really try to guilt trip me because we bought a house her son wanted? Well, apparently she absolutely did. It's definitely the most unwelcoming interaction I've ever had since we've moved in, but thankfully we have not seen her ever since. That entitled Karen is literally the definition of what passive-aggressive looks like. Instead of making some kind of point about what she's talking about, she decided to dance all around the issue just to try and throw clues down to make you make the assumption that she's trying to say something. And this is all just some stupid tactic just so she can be like, I can't believe you would think that. Or for her to try and pounce on you and make it seem like it was your idea to begin with. And people who act like that are unbelievably toxic. I can't stand people like that. If you have something to say to me, just say it to my face. That's my mentality. I would much rather have it out in the open than have somebody dance around the issue and pretend like that's not actually what you're trying to talk about. And that's exactly what this stupid entitled Karen was trying to do. She was absolutely trying to guilt trip these people into selling off this house to her stupid son, who, by the way, probably should have just put up a better offer. Like, it's not your fault you got the house. If he wanted it, he should have ponied up more money like you did. The original poster even goes on to explain that they even paid over value for the house just to get it. And it's not like this would be an easy fixer-upper either. This is a house from 1967 that hasn't upgraded anything since the original owner bought it back then. So honestly, good riddance to this entitled Karen. She was so far out of line asking those questions, and seriously, she has another thing coming if she thinks she can guilt trip somebody into selling their house. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked down below in the description. Am I the jerk for not changing my wedding to be in the United States, as none of my extended family are willing to travel to Canada just to see me married? Here's what happened. So I am getting married at the end of next month, and the wedding is going to be in Canada. My husband-to-be is Canadian, and that's where we will be living beginning in the fall. I am American, and so is most of my family. My wedding will be about 5 hours away from where me and my family currently live in the States. We already have everything planned and paid for, including the venue for the ceremony and reception. Today, I got several text messages and calls from my dad, my aunt, my uncle, and cousins asking me to change the location of my wedding to be within the United States. I am bewildered at this request, even though I already know my answer is going to be no. Apparently, my 20-year-old cousin got a DUI charge in Canada last year and isn't allowed back into the country because she'll be in some serious legal trouble. Now, I'm not close with this side of my family, nor did I know about this until today. So I reply to my aunt telling her that the venue is already paid for and that I'm not changing my plans. I then get several phone calls and paragraph text messages from my aunt and cousins, basically calling me selfish and that I don't care about my family. family. I then get a call from my dad asking if we can postpone our wedding and just have it at a city hall near where my parents are living. I tell them no, and mind you, my fiance and I paid in full for our wedding with no help from any of our families. But I get the same response calling me selfish and that no one wants to come to our wedding anyways. So this begs the question, am I the jerk for not changing my wedding destination, all to try and appeal to my cousin who got a DUI, as well as my family who doesn't want to travel to Canada? No, you are not the jerk. You are not selfish for saying, hey, this is where I'm getting married and we've already paid for everything. For them to be like, oh no, but your cousin who's clearly irresponsible got a DUI and now they can't go to Canada. You need to accommodate them. Like, what are we talking about? No, that's not gonna happen. It really does sound like your extended family is full of idiots. And it's probably a good thing that you're starting a new life away from these people. You've already paid for your wedding in full between you and your husband. No one helped you pull this together. They have no say in what you can and cannot do. And if anything, they're just projecting their own selfish attitude onto you, all because this cousin can't go to the wedding. And you know what? They're just using that as an excuse to try and push it so it's more convenient so they can go to your wedding. I mean, they said it themselves. They don't actually care about going to your wedding, and they're probably not going to show up anyways. So I don't blame you for saying, no, we're not going to reschedule everything, because this costs probably a lot of money just to reserve and plan out. And your idiotic extended family absolutely should not and will not have a say in where and when you get married. I overheard 3 of my roommates talking very poorly about me, and at this point, I'm so devastated, I seriously don't know what to do. So I live with 4 people, 2 other males and 2 women. Earlier today, I came downstairs to grab my laundry, and I heard both girls and one of the guys complaining about me. From what I can tell by what they were saying, this wasn't the first time they'd gotten together to gossip like this. It ranged from complaining about little things they don't like about me to things I've done recently, all the way up to making jokes and laughing at me for the way I am. I tend to be on the forgetful side, and I unfortunately don't always pick up on social cues. I've been diagnosed with ADHD, but sometimes I feel like it might be Asperger's or something like it. I've also suffered from depression and anxiety over the last few years. Apparently, there are things about me that have bothered them all year. For example, I used to have a bad habit of leaving kitchen cabinets open. Now, I was never told explicitly that this bothered anybody, but I had been asked a couple of times if I had meant to leave that open or something to that effect. And after that, I'd promptly just close it. I can see how this might seem like a reoccurring issue on my behalf, but I don't do it on purpose. I just get distracted while cooking or absent-minded, but over time with a few reminders, I was able to fix the cabinet issue altogether. There were other unsavory remarks about recent incidents, like about how the other day, I accidentally left a candle unattended downstairs, which incidentally, they've also done this several times, or how I opened the windows to let out a bad smell that they caused, and I accidentally fell asleep upstairs. It started raining while I was asleep, and some water got inside, which they had to clean up. I apologized both times, and I said that it was honestly just an accident, but it didn't seem to help. Admittedly, there has been a handful of things that happened recently, but they've all been accidents. Usually, I'm unaware that's even an issue until somebody brings it up. I never deny or get defensive, but I always apologize and I try to explain. From what they said, they don't feel like I'm sincere whenever I try to explain, even though I am. Over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I have felt like the odd one out. They don't really talk to me or include me in things that they do together. The other day, for example, one of the girls cooked dinner for herself and the others, and they ate together while watching TV. I wasn't offered any or asked to join them. In fact, as I'm typing this right now, they're currently out drinking, and once again, I wasn't invited. I convinced myself I was projecting until I heard them talking today. Until today, I believe these people were my closest friends. My birthday was this past month, and they made me a cake and threw me a really nice surprise party, which I've never had before. We also went to dinner, which was actually the first time I've had friends to go to dinner with for my birthday. I really thought they were my friends, but I can't seem to reconcile that with the sheer level of contempt I heard in their voices. And believe me, I really tried to convince myself that they were just blowing off steam or they were just frustrated, but it's honestly very unlikely with what they were saying. I can't remember verbatim, but it was honestly the kind of stuff that you would say about an insufferable coworker that you hate. The kind of person you know for a fact is saying the exact same things about you behind your back. It's not even that I can't take criticism well. I mean, I am usually the first to admit my flaws, and it's not just what was said, but also how it was said, dripping with disdain and contempt, like I'm the butt of a joke. I would never dream of talking about any of them like that to anyone, much much less amongst members of my own household. It feels like they think I do these things on purpose, or that I just don't care, or that I'm just plain stupid for not recognizing how what I do is received by other people. They quite literally called me a bad roommate, and maybe I am, but I really do try my best. I don't know what to do. I'm stuck here for classes until the end of June. I don't know if I should talk to them about it, or if it's even worth it. I'm devastated to find out that people I thought were close to me would secretly feel this way about me. What do I do in this situation? As far as I know, they don't know what I heard, but it still hurts and I'm at a loss of what to do. I think the first thing you need to realize is that, for starters, you now know exactly what these people are like. They are not your friends, they don't care about you, and they clearly think differently about you than what they're showing. Like, seriously, the way they're acting is so inappropriate. These people are not your friends, they don't care in the slightest, and they've clearly singled you out to be the bad guy in this situation, even though you have not done anything. And you know what? If they were better friends, they would at least have the common courtesy to speak up and say, hey, this thing you're doing around the house, it really bothers me. Can you please fix it in the future? And that literally would have solved all the problems around the house. But instead, they decided to be passive aggressive about it, and honestly, that just doesn't help anybody. But thankfully, you at least know that these are not people you ever want to live with again. They're not your friends, they don't care about you, and this should hopefully be enough of a sign to spur you on and help you find another place to live. And that's totally fine. Like, you have every right to live where you're comfortable. So if I was in your shoes, I would just tough it out. I would live quietly and just keep to myself, and I would just wait until June comes around the corner, and then I would just privately leave. Because if I'm gonna have roommates, I really would want them to be people who actually care about me, or at the very least, people who are going to be amicable and at least friendly towards me in the face of us living together. Because the people that you're currently living with are absolutely not your friends, and they are also just completely awful roommates. Am I the jerk for telling my neighbor to stop collecting our mail? My family and I are renovating our house, so we've had to move out for a year before moving back. We asked the builders to leave our letterbox, as we don't want to do mail redirection, and we go past the house every 1 to 2 days anyways. About a week after we moved out, the house was fenced off and the building started to commence. We came by nearly every day and still there was no mail. After a week of no mail, we contacted the post office, and they said that that's really weird and that they would check with the postman. The postman then said that our neighbor has told him that nobody lives there, but that they know where we moved to, so he was made to start delivering our mail to her house. After we found out, we went to our neighbor's house and we told her to please stop that. It's easy for us to collect our mail, and we told the postman to keep dropping it off in our letterbox, and we just explained the situation in general. Around this time, we had some mail turn up at our new address that our neighbor had written our address on and given it back to the postman the next day to redeliver. I was completely baffled. The few times she managed to do this took 3 weeks for it to redirect, even though we only moved 20 minutes away. Finally, I stopped by the house and I straight up told her to stop it. And when I said that, she got offended. She said she was doing it out of the kindness of her heart and making sure nobody stole our mail. I said the only one stealing it was her. Thankfully, she stopped doing it because now she is just straight up angry with us. But now I kind of feel bad about this. So I really need to know, am I the jerk for telling my neighbor to stop collecting our mail? No, you're not the jerk. This lady was clearly out of line. She was taking your mail and redirecting it to your house instead of just leaving it alone like any other normal person would do. And what in the world was this postman thinking? Why are they letting someone else get another person's mail without confirming with that family in the first place? Like, does this guy want to lose his job? That's so inappropriate. And I think depending on where you're living, I'm pretty sure that's illegal. Like, for example, I can't just go up to the postman whenever I go outside and be like, oh, my neighbor, yeah, they no longer live there. Give me all of their mail. Like, no, that's not okay. You can't do that. So personally, good for you for putting your foot down and telling this lady to buzz off. You don't need her collecting your mail, and you hit the nail on the head. The only person that's stealing your mail is your neighbor. I would also definitely file a complaint with the post office. There is clearly a rogue postman who's just giving out mail to whoever asked for it, and that, in my opinion, is incredibly weird, and that's not going to help anybody in this situation. I just found out that my boyfriend of 4 years cheated on me 3 years ago, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So I have strict parents. I'm a 22-year-old female, and 3 years ago when I was 19, I wasn't even allowed to drive out of our city because I was too far from them. This is my problem that I've been dealing with and working on with my family. This impacted our relationship because my family never knew I had a boyfriend. My boyfriend said he wanted me to tell them because our relationship didn't feel real. I couldn't travel, I couldn't have a a sleepover or even hang out past 10 o'clock. So anyways, back in September of 2020, he went to Arizona with his friends, and I am a super lenient girlfriend, so I had no problem with that. Long story short, I saw he added 3 girls on Snapchat. He told me he was under the influence, and one of them was a dealer, and I don't know how I believed him, to be honest. Anyways, we fight about that while he is still on this trip, and when he gets back, he breaks up with me. He says my parents are the issue. He feels insecure because he feels I'm gonna leave him for my family, and this just doesn't feel like a real relationship or whatever he was trying to say. In my opinion, he was valid, and he had the right to feel that way. Early 2020, and fast forward, and guess what? He's crying in my car, saying that he messed up and that he wants me back. I tell him that he broke up with me so suddenly that it's hard for me to fully commit. So we're in this phase of talking every day and going on dates, but not officially being back. He says he wants to go back to Arizona with his family and friends for Halloween. I say I don't like the idea because the last time he went, he added 3 girls on Snapchat and then broke up with me out of nowhere. But I tell him that we aren't official, so I guess go ahead. But that was more of a test, to be completely honest. He knows I'm uncomfortable with it, and I wanted to see if he would respect me. But you know what? He went. Halloween is when he cheated on me with one of the Snapchat girls but didn't tell me. And at present day, my parents know and do not approve. But he says that I proved that I chose him. When I told my mother, she had a heart attack. I mean, in the hospital for 4 days, a real life heart attack. But I moved on and we are happy together. And he is controlling of me, which I hate, but I live with him because I love him. A couple of nights ago, he accidentally told me he was flirting in Arizona. I had a bad feeling and I knew something more happened. So I ignored him for a couple of hours and told him I already know the truth and I'm waiting for him to admit it. I made him swear on my life, and finally he admitted that he cheated on me 3 years ago. I don't know what to do or think now. I feel like our entire relationship was a lie. He stated that he felt like I was going to leave him anyways, and he was insecure that my body count was 2 and he was at 1. What am I supposed to do with this idiotic reasoning? Also, he said that he didn't think our relationship was serious and we weren't together officially. I'm in so much shock that I haven't even cried yet because it just hasn't processed. I don't know if I should break up or if we should even try again. I am completely emotionally numb. Besides the obvious apologizing and whatever he said, a couple of weeks ago, he told me he wants to propose in 2 years. He sees our relationship as serious now and says he can't picture ever being without me. I mean, it's been 3 years since it happened, so yeah, our relationship has changed so much, but it just feels fake to me now. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. It really sounds like both of you are not emotionally mature enough to be in a relationship. For starters, he absolutely cheated on you, and he did it at a time where you didn't expect it and you thought you could trust him. So the fact that you're still in a relationship with him, even after all your suspicions are confirmed to be true, is really weird in my opinion. Like, you really deserve a lot more out of a relationship than being with some guy who has clearly cheated on you and still strung you along as if he really wanted to be with you. And I think overall, the attitude between the both of you is really weird. I mean, your boyfriend at one point was worried about body count, if you know what I mean. And meanwhile, you're going about giving him the cold shoulder and testing him in some kind of way, instead of being honest and open with what your needs are. So I honestly wish you the best of luck with this relationship, because based on what you've described, there's no reason why he wouldn't try and turn around and cheat on you again. And honestly, with all things considered, I think you deserve so much more out of a relationship. My girlfriend is demanding that I give up my opportunity to go to a prestigious master's degree program in Europe simply because she doesn't want to be alone in our home country. She even went as far as to threaten breaking up with me if I took this opportunity and left her in our home country. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So my girlfriend and I have been dating for 3 years now, and we really love each other. We have met and begun dating during our college graduation year in 2020. I had always planned to pursue a degree abroad after graduation, but my girlfriend says no to long-distance relationships. For context, my girlfriend and I are from a poorer country, and life here is very hard. Our degree doesn't have much weight on international job markets, and today we are both working full-time jobs, but none of us are happy with our life here in our home country. We are also very underpaid. She's an internal auditor for a big international cigarette company, but gets paid about $250 a month, and I get pretty much the same salary for being a consultant at a boutique firm. We are both unhappy of our current situation, and that's why I want to go study abroad to be able to access better opportunities. My girlfriend is a very lovely person with almost no close friends, and most of the time, she she feels depressed when she's left alone. When I first introduced my plans to her of going abroad 1 year after graduation, she was totally opposed to going into a long-distance relationship. She believes I am the only one that can make her happy and be able to bear living with. In addition, going abroad to study had never been a part of her plans. Although she complained all the time about our living conditions, it seems to me that she was fine with it for the most part. She has always believed that there has to be other ways to improve our living condition without leaving our home country, which is an idea that I totally disagree with, as our country is literally falling apart. All indicators have been worsening during the past 50 years. Years have gone by, and last year in 2022, we finally agreed that we would do our best to find international study opportunities abroad. Either we succeed together, or one of us succeeds this year, and the other one has to make everything to join the other person next year. Unfortunately, I was the one who got accepted in a prestigious university in Europe, while she didn't manage to get a single admission offer. And this is mainly because she applied to master's degree programs, which required things we didn't learn at school. Although we have already agreed on what we would do in this situation, she is now asking me to stay with her and reject my admission offer, which I believe is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. She said to me, "I wasn't serious when I agreed on that. I thought you would love me enough to stay with me. Let's just break up. I'll just return to my miserable, lonely life. Please, just reject your offer and let's try again next year." Although I love her, I believe if I refuse my admission offer, I will regret it for the rest of my life. I was lucky enough to get this offer in the first place, so now it leaves me questioning everything, and I seriously don't know what to do. You would be crazy to give up that opportunity. And also, your girlfriend's being a complete idiot. Like, let me get this straight. You live in a very poor country where you only earn $250 a month, and now you have an opportunity to expand yourself and earn more money, and your girlfriend wants you to give that opportunity up? Like, what are you talking about? If she seriously wants to break up because you're moving forward with your life, then that's on her, that's not on you. It sounds like you had some kind of plan going, but now that that plan's actually happening, she's like, "Oh, psych, I'm just kidding, I didn't want to actually do it. You should give up on this opportunity or I'm gonna break up with you." Like, clearly this is her true colors coming out in full force, and I would not listen to that in the slightest. So please, for the sake of your education, as well as getting out of a country that is clearly very poor, I would take this opportunity and not look back. And hopefully your girlfriend can get on board and follow along with the plan you guys set up, because giving up this opportunity simply because she's jealous, by the way, would be really ignorant, and it is incredibly toxic that she would request that of you in the first place. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Am I the jerk for spending a lot of time in my bunker away from my family? So my grandfather was an incredibly talented man who also suffered from paranoid schizophrenia, and he was convinced that the nuclear apocalypse was going to end the human race at some point. So he built his own bunker and then buried the entrance because he was so convinced that both the KGB and the CIA were absolutely watching him, and he wanted to keep the bunker a secret. Yes, he was a crazy man. My dad inherited his house but never lived there. So when I had my first child in 2018 and got married in 2019, my dad made an incredibly generous offer for the house. I mean, I bought computers that were more expensive than the house. The bunker became kind of an urban legend, mostly because my old grandpa used to tell a lot of crazy stories. But out of curiosity, I went looking for it and I found the entrance. The old man really did it. So thanks to being stuck at home during the uneventful 2020 and 2021, I started to remodel the bunker to look less like a fallout vault and more like my own personal man cave. Everyone loves it, especially my kids. So the house is decorated to my wife's taste, while I can do whatever I want in the bunker. I can play games, I can fix a computer, I can set up a whole home server, work from home there, etc. However, lately she has been complaining about me being distant and spending a lot of time there and less time with her and our child. She is pregnant again, so she said she was worried, but I just promised to spend more time at our house. After a few weeks, that wasn't enough for her, and she accuses me of abandoning her. Honestly, I'm asking for a judgment call here, because I'm trying to be there for my family, but this bunker feels like it's the only thing that's really mine, and it's the only place where I can actually have a break. But my wife has said she's going to seal the entrance, otherwise I might miss the birth of my child and not even notice. Should I just move all my stuff into the house and forget about it? Am I really being neglectful here, or is this just her pregnancy hormones talking? To be clear, I do help with the house chores and spend time with my son when I'm there, and I have an intercom in the bunker so my wife can just call me me if she needs anything, so it's not like she can't reach me. So am I the jerk for spending a lot of time in my bunker away from my family? Honestly, yeah, you're kind of the jerk in this situation. Your pregnant wife is raising your kid practically by yourself. Meanwhile, you're escaping to this bunker and spending your alone time without anyone around. Like, you're married, you do know that, right? You have responsibilities and you've got things you need to do around the house, much more than just chores and responsibilities. Like, you really do need to spend time with your wife and kids. And here's the thing, I don't think you're the jerk for spending time in the bunker, mostly because it kind of seems like he works remotely in the bunker itself for work. So that's not a problem. Like, that's part of the job. Okay, go for it. But it's the fact that your wife is saying, hey, I really don't want you spending so much time down there, and you're just straight up ignoring it. If you're gonna start a family, this is no longer all about you. So in my opinion, your actions need to reflect what's best for your family, and not just what's best for you and your needs. My entitled dad made me abandon my dog right as they're about to be put down, and I am so unbelievably heartbroken by this, I seriously don't know what to do. For the last 12 years, I have been essentially one of, if not the main caregiver for our family dog. My dog's name is Max, and I was the one who would be mainly responsible for taking care of him, as I was typically responsible for letting him out and feeding him 3 to 4 times a day, including as I was getting ready for work at my full-time job. I would also be the one responsible for cleaning up the dog waste on a bi-weekly basis, and when it was time for everyone else to go on vacation, I would regularly be the one to volunteer to stay behind just to take care of the dog. Max was one of the 2 main pets our family had, and the other one passed away a few years back from old age. He was also a significant part of the reason why I probably didn't fully unalive myself, because at the time I thought I wouldn't be able to love him and care for him as well anymore, and that they could have also just brought down his quality of life, which has been decreasing lately as he gets older, and there had been signs that he was going for a while now, like how he was getting more lethargic and he was unable to control his bowels, and he was drinking excessive amounts of water while eating less and less, though he had gotten even worse within the last week, as he was suddenly vomiting multiple times throughout the day. He was drooling and had a runny nose, and he was unable to consistently stand, sit, or walk, especially on stairs without any kind of help. So that mostly catches you up to more recently, when yesterday, my parents scheduled Max to be put to sleep at our local vet clinic, and this would all be done as we sat around him, pet him, and held him, and just talked to him. At this point, I had asked my parents if I could call into work so I didn't have to go in for at least a day after, because I knew I would be a complete mess, and we don't actually need my money from work for anything like rent or groceries, so me having the day off would be fine. But my dad said that he didn't want me to skip out of work, and we work in the same building and we live together, so I couldn't take off work without him knowing and yelling at me, so I figured I would just go anyways. Then, this morning, we had another session of trying to give Max as much love as we could, all before we took him in. My father, my youngest brother, and I went in with Max, and we were taken into one of their exam rooms, and it looked like it was just for animals who were ready to be put down. We got him up onto the table where they could treat and groom the animals, and we tried to give him some love for the last time, while also trying to keep him on the table, and trying but failing to not cry, as we waited for about 10 minutes, after which time a nurse came in to check in on us, and then another 10 minutes later, she and another nurse came in to insert some kind of catheter in through his arm, and I assumed so he wouldn't make a mess as he went away, though my dad had walked us out of the room by this point. I assumed it was because he didn't want us distracting the nurses or our dog, or because it would have been too crowded in the room. Then, about 15 minutes later, they finished up and went back into the room, where I thought we would stay until Max fully passed away, but apparently, my dad only wanted us to go back in just to spend a couple of minutes to say goodbye, before they even sedated him or done anything else. I was really disappointed by this, as I wasn't there at all when our other dog passed away 3 years ago, and being there in the last few minutes of him being alive was like 90% of the reason I had actively wanted to be there for him. Plus, I know that when a pet's owners aren't there for them when they go, they often are way more nervous and scared, which is something I knew that would happen, both because he was acting fidgety the entire time that we were there, and because he had always been nervous and high-stressed, especially when he was separated from all of us, or when he was around new people, or in a new place, all of which was happening right now. So I protested, as being there for him would literally just take another 10 to 15 minutes at most, and it wasn't something that I couldn't just come back to do later. He kept insisting that we had to go, even though the nurses specifically mentioned how we could be there as long as we needed, but in particular, particular until he passed away. I initially didn't understand what the rush to leave was, but I was not in an arguing mood, nor was I even sure what was happening, or if we would maybe come back again after they set some more stuff up or whatever, so I just decided to follow him. Apparently though, the reason he wanted to leave, and leave permanently and entirely, not just for a couple of minutes like I hoped, was because he just wanted to get home so he could start getting rid of all of Max's things, like his dishwater and his bed and all of his stuff, as well as specifically vacuuming up to get rid of all the dog hair and everything. I was hoping to at least keep some of his things, since it really helped when other dogs passed away to have things and pictures just to remind me of when she's gone. I feel like not only did he let Max down for not being there for him, he also let him down by basically trying to erase his memory from our entire house, and letting us down by not letting us grieve and mourn him properly or fully. I also feel like he wasn't emotionally prepared to be there for it. He could have stepped outside himself and given us the chance to stay, but instead he took it away from both of us, then basically made a point of how over it he was by not letting us keep any of his stuff, and mentioning how he had plans to go to work later, as if we should all just be moving past it or whatever like he is. I'm not sure how long it's going to take to fully move on though, but I feel like the drive home is definitely not enough, especially since I feel like I can't stop imagining the worst case scenario of him passing away feeling scared, alone, and afraid. I don't know how I'm supposed to remember that over anything else, like taking him on walks or on vacations or to the dog park or anything. This is all so heartbreaking and I seriously don't know what to do. Honestly, first and foremost, this is really heartbreaking. I can't imagine not being able to say goodbye to a loved one just like that. And for me, a dog is a loved one. It is a pet, yes, but it is absolutely a part of the family in my mind. And that dog is relying on you, and it trusted you to take care of him. And the way your dad acted was unbelievably heartless and cruel. To not allow you to sit there and be with your dog in its last moments, especially after you were the one that took care of it for so many years, is unbelievably toxic. And that is not something I would take lightly in the slightest. I mean, I would be heartbroken. And he is clearly trying to erase any memory of Max from the house. I totally agree with you. I mean, keep something. Keep some kind of trinket. Something to remind you that this was a good dog and that you loved and you cared for it. Max helped you through some of your darkest times in your life, and that is something you can absolutely hold on to. So truly, I'm so sorry. Your dad is a complete jerk, and you absolutely did not deserve to miss out on this moment in Max's life. My teachers demand that we stop picking mangoes off the tree behind our school. So as a result of us maliciously complying, the mangoes begin to rot and it causes so many problems for the school. Here's what happened. So this happened back in 2010 in middle school, and for a bit of context, I live in an old rural town, not in the United States. The only middle school in this town used to be a nursery, the kind where plants and trees are grown or sold, not a medical nursery. Most of the trees were cut down when the place became a school, and a few of them were fruit trees, with 3 or 4 of them being mango trees. All of us kids loved taking them home by the bunches to enjoy them with our families or eating them during lunch and breaks. Occasionally, some kids would try throwing rocks or sticks at the tree branches to make some of the mangoes fall over, and one of the teachers didn't like this. Understandably, throwing rocks can be dangerous, but nobody was throwing them at each other, and they were careful looking for any people passing by as not to hurt anyone. Now, the most logical thing to do would be to forbid students from throwing things at trees, right? But instead, the school passed a rule that any student caught picking up the mangoes, whether they be on the floor or trying to get them from the tree, would get in trouble and even face suspension. We all thought it was a dumb idea, but me and a few other students could smell the eventual disaster from a mile away. So nobody protested, and everyone at school agreed to comply, even the kids who were known to be rebellious. Well, about a month or so later, the whole school was absolutely stinking of rotten mangoes. And for those who don't know, mango season usually peaks during early spring and late summer. Plus, where we live, rainy season hits in the summer. So imagine old rotting mangoes in muddy water puddles that sit for days at a time in the summer heat. Trust me when I say this is not a good combination of smells. The teachers by that point told us that if we see a mango in good condition, we could pick it up and we could eat it. But we simply refused. We couldn't possibly break the new rule that was imposed by a respectable teacher. We had to maliciously comply and obey like the good students we were. The school had to pay a cleanup crew to dump all the rubbish, and some of the parents, my mom included, complained about the wastefulness of perfectly edible fruit. The next year, we were all enjoying some delicious mango-flavored ice pops, all under the shade of those good old summer breezes. And the mango ice pops were made and sold by a classmate. And as it turns out, even the teacher that had originally started the complaints ended up being a loyal customer for these ice pops as well. So in the end, it all kind of worked out. You can tell this story happened outside the United States because you can bet those mango trees probably would have been chopped down if any of the students got caught trying to eat them. I personally really love this story because this is really funny. Instead of complaining, they decided to maliciously comply, and that caused a lot of problems for the school. So maybe next time, if the kids aren't bothering anybody and they're literally not hurting anybody else around them, then maybe just leave them alone and let them have some fun, because they literally didn't do anything wrong. I paid my favorite artists to listen to my music, and as a result, they didn't like it, and I got roasted by the nearly 400 people who were watching their live stream. And not only have I never felt more embarrassed by something happening to me, but I also feel very motivated and very inspired to continue making music and continue to do what I enjoy. Here's what happened. So I have to preface this before I dive in. The biggest thing is that I'm not angry or upset about this. This is more just getting my thoughts out there. Today, I saw that my favorite artist was streaming live online, listening to other people's music. I've listened to this music for 10 years now, and he's gotten really popular over time. It's been amazing to watch him grow into the artist he is today, and I will always love him for that. I had seen him go live a couple of times listening to other people's music, and I never participated. I just listened to other people's songs and I just kind of hung out. But today, my fiance saw he was live and pressured me into paying for him to hear my song. So I paid and sat in horror for 2 hours. I was on my phone scrolling through Facebook when I heard him say my name, and instantly my stomach dropped. I regretted everything, and I hated that I put myself in this situation. The feeling only worsened when I heard the beat come on, and I realized there was 400 people watching. I sat in horror as I watched his face sour up. The comments were also not very nice. I wanted to make him turn it off, but it was too late. As the song ended, I read all the comments about me being a clone of other artists, and virtually everybody was roasting me. A couple people enjoyed it, but the general consensus was that I was terrible. I was gutted. I was completely embarrassed. I went into my room and I cuddled with my dog for 20 minutes. And then I realized something, and I've never felt more clear. As I said before, I've listened to him for a long time. I remember not liking his music at first, but as time went on, he got better and he blew up. After realizing this, I got up and I went to my computer where I record my music, and I listened to my first songs all the way up until my new ones. And I almost started to cry. I heard myself grow. I heard myself become more comfortable, and I heard my story from my point of view when the events were happening. It was amazing. I'm so proud of myself, and I'm so happy I paid to get roasted by my favorite artist, because now I have so much inspiration and drive to continue to do what I do. This story turned out to be way better than I thought it would be. Like, obviously the original poster came into this saying, you know what, I want to have this guy listen to my music. And then it all just kind of went south pretty quickly after that. I really think this story is a good example of how you shouldn't let other people dictate your future as a creative person. This easily could have destroyed this person. This could have made them stop doing music pretty much for the rest of their lives. Getting that kind of criticism from somebody that you look up to, as well as 400 viewers in this guy's chat, potentially could have been devastating for this person. But they fought through it. They were able to take some time to themselves, really process what was happening, and then decide, you know what, I have grown as an artist. Because at the end of the day, that really is what it's all about. They were able to look back on their music and say, I've grown a lot, I've been able to learn a lot, and even though this person doesn't like my music right now, it doesn't mean that I won't be able to do more music in the future. And that, in my opinion, is such a good lesson to learn. And you know what? Forget what this guy thinks. Who cares if he's some big streamer who likes music and has blown up because of their own music? Their personal taste in what you create doesn't dictate your future in the slightest. So I really like that the original poster was able to overcome this type of criticism and have some kind of positive outlook about the situation in general. My entitled mother-in-law freaks out on me and my wife, claiming that we ruined her Mother's Day by not giving her enough attention. Things got so bad that she freaked out in the middle of a restaurant and stormed off after making a massive scene. Here's what happened. So my mother-in-law is an annoying person, to say it in the nicest way. She has extremely low self-worth, and she compensates that by forcing the world to go around her. As family who interact with her regularly, we are forced to treat her like a queen every day, every minute. If we don't, well, then there will be drama. All the way from pouting, going to her room, fainting, or leaving the house, all the way up to a full-blown breakdown, including saying, why should I live on this planet anymore if no one even cares about me? So yeah, to see an old woman act like that, just because we don't give her a few minutes of attention, is a bizarre thing to witness. So it's exhausting to be around her. her. But what else can my wife and sister-in-law do? She is their mom, and they both try their best to make her feel special, but they would also like to interact with her as their mom too, not just as some out-of-touch royalty. They would like to crack jokes, chat about general things, and share their problems, and not having to constantly worry about what statement might tick her off. When they were kids in her orbit, things were fine as she controlled them, and that made her feel like she's the center of attention. Now that they are married and have families of their own, and now that she is not the anchor of the family, she has started becoming more and more demanding that we perform some elaborate rituals just to make her feel special, and that is extremely exhausting. So anyways, my mother-in-law and father-in-law have traveled to our country and are staying with us for a short time to help us with the kids. As we all live halfway across the globe, my wife planned an elaborate Mother's Day event centered around her mom, even though she herself is a mom as well. This also included a lunch at a popular ethnic cuisine restaurant. By the way, had she not planned it herself, there will be a snarky comment at the end of the day saying something like, "Seems you don't care about your mom enough to plan something for me. I was waiting the whole day for you to do something." So anyways, morning went uneventful as we had been pampering the grown-up toddler, and my mother-in-law was quite happy about it. We go to the restaurant and we set up the table as my wife is bringing others in. My 2-year-old decides to throw a temper tantrum for, toddler reasons, but then my mother-in-law sees this beautiful garden in front of the restaurant and wants my wife to take a picture of her. My mother-in-law doesn't care about anything and forces my wife to take several pictures as my wife is holding a crying, fussing, and kicking toddler on her hip. Having basked in the glory of being in the center of attention, my mother-in-law is satisfied enough and they all come into the restaurant. My wife is really upset from the events, but she's trying her best to be cheerful. The waiter comes in to take the order, and right then my mother-in-law decides to go to the restroom. My wife asks her to order before she goes, as the kids will get hungry if we wait for a long while. Now this proved to be a big mistake for my wife because she asked this in a normal, regular conversational tone instead of a pleading or a pleasing pampering tone. I mean, how dare we order her royalty on what to do? That was apparently strike one. As me and my wife are looking at the myriad of choices and trying to order for the kids, ourselves, and everything else along with it, we got absorbed into ordering without paying attention to the most important person in the room. My mother-in-law wasn't the center of attention for 2 full minutes. I mean, how dare we? That apparently was strike 2. We didn't notice that and asked her what she wants. She asked if they had a specific ethnic dish, which is a regular staple that we have almost every single day at home. What she was asking for would be like ordering a grilled cheese sandwich, and that too in an indifferent, meek tone. She was indirectly implying that she was just some kind of nobody, so she is ordering some peasant food. Now apparently that was our cue to realize our mistake, drop to the ground, beg her forgiveness, and bring the world back into alignment before things start to go downhill. We failed to notice the change in her tone, which is apparently strike 3 for everybody across the board. Instead, my wife suggests and says the following: "Mom, we have that almost every day at home." Now, as my wife is talking, my mother-in-law cuts her off and starts to say, "I know that. Are you saying I don't know that?" And at that point, she storms off to the restroom. We are all figuring out what in the world just happened, so we just finish ordering our food. The mother-in-law comes back and unloads onto my wife about how she has disrespected her. We brought her to this country, and ever since then, my wife has made it her mission to apparently do nothing but humiliate her. And at this point, her mom starts to cry. I quickly realize what had conspired, but my innocent wife, whose heart is only filled with love and not such evil games, doesn't realize the drama that my mother-in-law wants to cause. Instead, she is trying to understand how suggesting that the dish is a regular staple at home is somehow humiliating to her mom. But her mom goes on to say, "You're implying that I'm dumb and you're ruining Mother's Day. All daughters do special things on Mother's Day, and here you are ruining mine." And those are just a few of the things that she screamed at my wife. My wife tries to backpedal in some kind of way, but my mother-in-law is adamant that my wife humiliated her by implying that she's dumb for not knowing a staple food in our country. She then storms off to sit outside. It was extremely bizarre to see a 60-year-old woman throw a temper tantrum and accuse her daughter of trying to humiliate her. Now, normally we would run after her. We would apologize and beg her to come back in. We would keep apologizing throughout lunch, but this time we were so over this garbage, especially after dealing with this so many times before. My wife does all this planning, wanted to be a good daughter, wanted her mom to feel special, and in the end has ruined Mother's Day by talking to her mom as if her mom was not royalty. So a 60-year-old woman started started crying in the middle of a lunch rush in a popular restaurant, all because we didn't give her attention for 5 minutes, all while we were busy ordering food for her kids. And we are just left scratching our head over this, not sure what to make of any of it. The mother-in-law in this story seriously sounds disturbed. I can only imagine what it would be like to try and grow up in that household. Like, can you even imagine how obnoxious she must have been? Like, every day, all day has to be about her. Like, she needs to be the center of attention all the time. And that's insane to me. Not to mention all the work that the original poster's wife put into this event. I mean, this mother-in-law is so entitled, and her actions are seriously so uncalled for. So hopefully in the future, you're able to avoid this lady altogether, because the way she's acting is unbelievably obnoxious, and there's no reason to demand that you are the center of attention all the time. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay for my boyfriend's food after he ruined my food photos? So I have an Instagram account dedicated to photos and short videos of food from local restaurants, and these are all places in my local city. I don't turn meals into a whole photo shoot production when I go out, but I like to snap a few photos every day as it comes out. I've got about 1,000 followers. It's just a hobby for me, but I have made friends with some other bloggers, and we like to go out and get pictures together and try new restaurants. I prefer doing this with my foodie girls because my boyfriend absolutely hates it and will go out of his way to take a big bite of food or mess up his plate with his fork before I can snap a picture, and he rolls his eyes when I take pictures of my food, so I pretty much stopped bothering when we went out together. Money has been tight lately because of some medical bills, so I haven't been able to go out with my foodie girls, and the infrequent dates with my boyfriend is the only chance I get to eat out. I had to sit him down and have a talk, basically asking him to just let me enjoy things, and I told him I was gonna take pictures of my own food when we went out, while also asking if he could please not be immature about it. And since we alternate between who pays for the date and who just enjoys the food, I told him I would appreciate it if he could spare the 30 seconds for me to snap a picture of the appetizer as well as his meal on nights while I'm paying. And I got a sort of half-hearted do whatever you want confirmation. Sunday was my turn to pay, and he let me take a picture of the appetizer with minimal fussing. But then when the entrees came out, I went to snap a picture of his, and he messed it up with his fork. Then he reached over and stirred my pasta to also ruin the photo of my own meal. I was so upset about that I refused to pay for his half of the food at the end of the meal, which really upset him because he said he wouldn't have offered a cocktail if he knew I was gonna skip my turn. He says I owe him one because I don't get to decide not to pay according to our agreement after we've already ordered. This is all unbelievably frustrating, and I seriously don't know what to do. First off, you're not the jerk for not wanting to pay for your boyfriend. He is acting incredibly toxic and very dismissive towards your hobbies. Like, seriously, all he had to do was just sit there and let you take pictures. This is something you're interested in. This is your hobby. Like, seriously, just let people enjoy things. Let people have fun with their silly little hobbies, even if you don't understand it. This guy very easily could have sat back, been on his phone, stepped away and used the bathroom while you took literally 30 seconds to take pictures, if not shorter. And it's not even the fact that he messed up his own food. He also messed up your food. And I'm sure that these places you're going to are probably a little bit expensive. Like, to get food that looks well presented and isn't just run-of-the-mill stuff, it probably costs a pretty penny. So I can completely understand your anger and your frustration towards your boyfriend. So you know what? You're not the jerk. If I was in your shoes, there's no way I would pay for the meal. And I would absolutely personally feel very justified in my anger because he ruined the one thing you wanted to do that night besides, I don't know, try to spend time with your boyfriend, who, by the way, is not very supportive of you or your endeavors. So hopefully you can see the jerk that this guy absolutely is, because his behavior is incredibly immature and you deserve so much better than this treatment. Am I the jerk for refusing to listen to my mother-in-law's speech on my wedding? So to start things out, I hate speeches. I never understood the appeal, and I think they are boring, exhausting, and very, very forced. But having said that, this is just my opinion, and I never forced it on anyone. I have sat through long, exhausting speeches without complaining like any other decent human being. When it was my turn to get married, however, I requested that no speeches would be given. We wrote that we loved everyone and that we knew they loved us. So if you want to say anything to us directly, say it in private. My husband thought it was funny, but he knew my feelings about speeches. We had a small wedding with only loved ones, and it was all weekend long. My husband loves games, so the wedding planner did a really great Taskmaster type of games, and everyone really appreciated it. Dinner came, and my mother-in-law stood up and tried to start start making a speech. She said, "I know we are forbidden to make speeches by the bride, but this is my only son getting married, so I will do what I want to." Honestly, when she started doing this, I didn't hear the rest of it because I was seeing red. My sisters and bridesmaids were shocked. I pretended like she wasn't talking and continued my conversation with my girls, and they did the same. My mother-in-law was furious. Both sister-in-laws were furious, and my husband was very angry that it showed in his profile. He refused to look at me. The rest of the night was incredibly awkward. My husband's side was sulking in their seats. I wanted to make sure it wasn't ruined for the rest of us, and we ended up having a blast. The next day, I spent it with my family and my friends. My husband said that I was very wrong in what I did. I couldn't force my mother-in-law to shut up, and he knew that she wouldn't no matter how much we told her. Apparently, I shouldn't have disrespected and humiliated her like this, and it really seems like our marriage has started off on the wrong foot. So am I the jerk for refusing to listen to this stupid speech? Honestly, I don't think you're the jerk in this situation. You made your wishes very clear for this wedding. You didn't want anybody giving any speeches. This is very clear cut, and it sounds like this was a very selective group of people who were coming to the wedding. They all knew the rules. They knew what was expected of them there at the wedding, and they knew what they should and should not do. And giving a speech was on the do not do list. It doesn't matter if this is her only child or her 17th child. She broke the rules, so she has to deal with the consequences. And seriously, this is really unfortunate of your husband, because I seriously think he's in the wrong. He's picking his mother and her dignity over you, and that is not okay. He needs to fix that. And you're also under no obligation at your wedding to listen to your mother-in-law and her stupid speech. So seriously, in my opinion, you are not the jerk. You didn't do anything wrong. And if anything, your husband and your mother-in-law are absolutely the jerks in this situation. Am I the jerk for telling one of my good friends that I wouldn't be attending his wedding simply because my wife wasn't invited? So my best friend from college and I are both having weddings this year. His is in June and mine is in November. Mine is really more of just a party because I married my wife at the courthouse about a year ago because we didn't want to wait until we could afford the party to commit to one another. He invited me to his wedding, but not my wife. I waited until his deadline for RSVPs and then told him I wouldn't attend because my wife and I go to events together, or we don't go at all because she is the woman behind me just as much as I am the man behind her, and we are effectively a unit. And I know I shouldn't have waited, but I wanted to try and push off an uncomfortable conversation. Well, needless to say, he blew up on me and accused me of always choosing others over him and not being a decent friend or caring about him at all. He said that he didn't invite my wife because there physically wasn't enough space at the venue and that I wasn't the only one affected by this. He went on to essentially say that I need to not be codependent and that he wasn't asking me to go on a 6-month deployment for my family, but that I needed to be there for him to be a good friend. I eventually caved because he made me feel bad, and I said that I'd go without my wife, while also making that decision after talking about it with my wife. But my thought now is that if you plan a wedding at a physically small space, it's okay to invite just me, but by the same token, don't be upset when I decline because it's the type of deal where you made your bed and now you have to lie in it. It's also worth noting that I had a similar constraint on my wedding, but cut 2 family members just to allow people to have their family with them. Now, for some further context, I am a government controls engineer working on a very expensive, very time-consuming project currently. I'm not at the top of the chain, but I've been able to advance my career very quickly, so I am in a position of responsibility. I missed his bachelor party because I needed to travel for a work meeting. Now, my friend is very much still the Chad, let's get drunk type, and I'm just not like that anymore. I have a wife, I have 2 small children who are the absolute most important thing to me. I don't respond to his texts nearly as often or as quickly, and I don't endlessly play video games with our old group like I used to, so I think it's fair for him to feel he's not as important, because while I love him, he also just isn't compared to my career, but most of all my family. Now, my wife and I are not attached to the hip. To clarify, weddings, funerals, graduations, work dinners, we all go together. If it's a boys' night out or a girls' night out, we have no problem being apart. So this honestly begs the question, am I the jerk for turning down going to this wedding all because my wife wasn't invited? First off, I can't believe you were guilt-tripped into going to that wedding. Seriously, your friend is an awful friend. The fact that he wasn't accommodating towards your wife really is honestly ridiculous. Like, he could have been like, oh, don't worry, just bring your wife with you. You're probably one of the few people, if not the only person who complained about this. So I really don't know why he decided to freak out and guilt trip you into going to this this wedding. And this guy is very clearly not your friend. He's being an absolute jerk, and he seriously needs to check himself. Now, when it comes to the wedding itself, the original poster actually has an update for us. He goes on to say that he's not going to the wedding, and this friend is not going to his. And also, the friendship they have has been terminated. And apparently, this is not the first instance where some kind of tension has been brought up. And honestly, with all things considered, and for the way this guy is acting, all I have to say is good riddance. This is not someone that I would personally want in my life, and I seriously don't blame you for deciding to not go to his wedding, because he is showing some true colors, regardless of if you reserved your spot on time or not. His behavior is atrocious, and you seriously do not need that in your life. An entitled Karen makes fun of my weight after I was just trying to joke and have a good time at work, but I had a great comeback and I ended up putting her right in her place. Here's what happened. So I've been working at a department store in my hometown for 10 months, and in working, I've encountered so many entitled people. Men demanding that their children play on the merchandise stands that break incredibly easily, and some entitled Karens demanding free gift cards. This time around, when I was covering an evening shift for one of my coworkers, a Karen oozing with entitlement from her pores came to my register and asked about the bags. Since laws were passed, my home state banned plastic bags and instead sell fabric bags for nearly $2. That seems ridiculous to me because I see so many bags rip so easily, but that's another story for another day. This entitled Karen says she doesn't have time for talking, which I mean, I totally get that. Some people really need to buy stuff and then get out. When she asked about our bag policy and how much we sell them for, I was in a cheery mood and I said to her, usually my store sells them for about $2, but if you're really nice to me, you can get them for free. The woman just gawked at me and steam came out of her ears in anger. I asked her if there was a problem and she started screeching. Well, that's not nice of you. You force people to be nice to you in exchange for a free bag. Are you serious, you fat cow? For the record, I'm not a cow. I'm a short girl with some curves. I wasn't going to tolerate any more mean people because I had dealt with enough of them recently. I knew I was risking my job and being mean right back to the entitled woman. So I said to her, ma'am, I'm not a fat cow. I prefer to be called a plus-size pixie. However, I will let this slide because I want you out of my store as soon as possible. No free bags for you then. Have a nice day. Now, I've been in customer service since my teenage years, so I've become speedy in helping customers with purchases, and I charged the woman for the bags before she left with a dagger-shooting glare. The customers in line behind her clapped for me as the woman walked away. Seriously, why do so many people forget their manners? Did quarantine over COVID-19 make everyone forget to be kind and polite? Does it hurt a person to be nice and give a smile? If someone can make sense of this, I would greatly appreciate it. Yeah, that entitled Karen was being really rude. Like seriously, you were just trying to lighten the mood. You were obviously just joking with customers. And honestly, that's kind of a catch-22 situation. Sometimes it will go well depending on who it is, but most times in my experience, it's not going to go well. And the person is probably going to be a really big weirdo about it. I know when I worked in customer service, that's all I ran into. You would have to gamble on whether or not you had to be neutral and very distant from the customer, or it was someone that you could actually joke around with and have a good time. And I'm absolutely with the original poster on this one. They were literally just trying to be nice and smile to this entitled Karen. They were trying to brighten a day and clearly make a joke. Like, I really think anybody who has a brain can see that the original poster was joking. I don't think she was being completely serious by saying, oh, if you're nice to me, you'll get a free bag. So it's really weird for this entitled Karen to freak out and be like, oh my God, I've got to be nice to you to get a free bag. You're a fat cow. Like, come on, that is so uncalled for. So honestly, don't stop being you, because that customer was just a stick in the mud, and it sounds like you're trying to make the best out of working in retail. My entitled sister is claiming that she understands me grieving the loss of my husband because she herself lost her dog, and now she thinks she understands me fully when it comes to how I'm handling the loss of my husband. But after telling her off and saying no, these are not comparable, she freaks out and is now refusing to talk to me. And I'm now not sure if I'm the jerk for this situation, and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. To make a long story short, I lost my husband only a month ago. It's hard. I'm still grieving, and I miss him every single day. I have to take medication for depression and anxiety to help me get through the day. Last week, my sister's dog was put down due to some health issues, and she was very upset, which is understandable. She called me as soon as it happened and said I was the only sibling who would understand her pain. I didn't mind, honestly. I just wanted to comfort her since her dog meant the world to her. She held a wake for him, and our whole family attended. It really was a nice service. But now she is actually comparing our losses, telling me she knows exactly what I'm I'm going through, that she can relate to the pain of losing someone so close to you. She calls me asking if we should visit graves together. It was fine the first time, but it's constant now. She goes 3 times a day. It's already difficult to go once a week for me, and she knows this. I feel like she's not even considering my own grieving process. Anyways, I told her that grieving her dog is not the same as me grieving my husband. Now she's upset and is refusing to talk to me. I get it, it was uncalled for really, but my loss is new to me too, and I guess I just got frustrated with how different we're dealing with our losses. I don't know, I feel like she should be able to understand where I'm coming from as well. A dog is not the same as a husband. A dog can't love you back like a husband can. A dog can't read to your children like a husband can. A dog cannot make soup when you're ill like a husband can. It's really hard for me right now to discern when I'm being condescending or not. I don't know if it's a side effect of my medication or if the empathetic part of my brain has just shut down, but I am really getting tired of her comparing our pain when she lost a dog and I lost my world. At the very least, she still has her husband to lean on. I have 2 young children at home and I'm processing a loss unimaginable to most kids their age, and she's trying to whisk me away to graveyards to visit her dog. So honestly, am I the jerk for telling my sister off? What should I do? You are not the jerk. Your sister is crazy. How can she actually compare the two? Like, this is not even in the same wheelhouse of things that you could grieve about. One is a living, breathing person that is no longer with us, and the other is a dog, a literal animal. Like, those are not even comparable. And the original poster has it right. It's already hard enough to grieve the loss of her husband, but now she has her stupid sister coming in and being like, I understand your pain. Like, no you don't, idiot. You still have your husband. The original poster lost their husband. They don't have them anymore. And the original poster's sister can always get another dog, and that would probably fill whatever hole in her heart she's experiencing. And also, this is really selfish of the sister to step in and try and be like, oh, I understand your grief because my dog died. We're on the same level of grief understanding. Like, no, that's not how this works in the slightest. You are seriously crazy if you think that, and there's no way that kind of attitude or behavior should be tolerated. So if your sister doesn't want to talk to you anymore over this situation, just remind her that your situations are not comparable. And the fact that she would try to say that they are is honestly mind-blowing and unbelievably inappropriate. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Am I the jerk for being excited to tell my ex-girlfriend, who cheated on me by the way, that she won't be getting a dream job at my company? Here's what happened. So my ex-girlfriend and I split up about 18 months ago after being together for 5 years. My ex started university later than everyone else and graduated last year. I found out she was cheating on me when my friend had spotted the 2 of them kissing, as well as flirting and getting handsy in the bar. I confronted her about her cheating, and she tried to spin the whole thing around on me. The breakup was messy and it stung a lot. I currently work as a recruiter for a fairly decent-sized IT company in the city. My ex studied project management at university and has applied for an entry-level project management assistant role at the company I work for. Despite what happened, I was still fair to her in the first stage interview process. I didn't tamper with any of her answers, and she impressed the hiring staff. The interview process for the job was a 3-stage process, first stage with me, and the other 2 with hiring managers and other people she'll be working with. I overheard through a mutual friend that she seemed to be really excited about this job. Today, I received the news from the hiring managers that they'll be going with another candidate for the role, and that it's my duty tomorrow morning to contact her and tell her that she was unsuccessful in getting a job that she's dreamt about. So it honestly begs the question, am I the jerk for being excited to tell my ex-girlfriend who cheated on me that she won't be getting her dream job tomorrow? First off, I want to say that yeah, I don't think there's a problem with feeling excited about that, but there is no way I would allow myself to be that person who tells her if I was in your shoes. Think about it for a second. You had a really messy breakup with this woman. You caught her in the act of cheating on you, you confronted her about it, and it was really not a good time when you had to break up with her. And while I totally understand that you want to try and get some kind of revenge on her, I also think it would not be in your best interest to be the one to do it. Like, your ex-girlfriend clearly sounds unhinged, and you can bet she would try to claim some kind of discrimination against you if you just so happen to be the one to tell her that she didn't get the job. She might try to claim, oh, my ex-boyfriend works there and he's the reason I didn't get the job, or some other garbage like that. Like, based on what you've described, I don't think it would be beyond her to try and do that. I mean, when you caught her cheating and when you confronted her about the entire thing, she tried to spin it around and blame it on you. You really think she wouldn't try to do that again on you in this situation. And to top it all off, this is a job that she really wants to be a part of. She's expressed interest in it, she went through the entire interview process, and she has said, yes, I'm very excited about working here. So in my opinion, you being the one to tell her would be a horrible idea. It could cost you a lot of trouble, and honestly, it might even cost you your job. My dad refuses to get a job, despite all the attempts I've made to try and help him get a job, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. My father has been a fairly successful man in the past, and due to circumstances such as divorce and other financially related issues from 15 years ago, he has had to find other employment. I am conscious of this fact, and always trying to be empathetic as possible when talking to him about this. Recently, things have gotten much worse, with him only being able to find contacts that last a few months, and then is unemployed for the rest of the year. Despite this, I've been trying to help him and suggest any kind of avenues of restoring his business, his credit, working out payment plans for debt, and all this other stuff. He always says they're good ideas, but never follows through. 2 weeks ago, we got into a discussion about me taking on his regular house duties like cooking and taking over more cleaning duties, just so he can apply for more jobs, and he was doing great for the first 2 or 3 days, but after that he slowed down and is now barely applying for jobs from what I can see, and spending all his time either outside or on social media scrolling. As well as this, he is more concerned with the state of the lawn than he is with finding employment. Things financially are not in the best spot, and more than likely he will be struggling to pay bills and afford basic things in a month or so. In light of this, I've been checking on him every few days, and most recently asked why he is not sitting down at his computer or sending out resumes left and right. He tells me that he is outside chatting with people, and then when he shows me his LinkedIn, his last message is from a week before. I feel as though he could easily find something within the next few weeks if he just applied himself 100% and spent at least a few hours a day customizing resumes and connecting with people. In our last conversation, he said it is emotionally draining for him when I talk to him about these things, and says that I am being a detriment more than I am being of help. My thought process is that I am trying to get him to realize that the way he is going about it will more than likely land him in the same spot as before. My problem is my father is the type of person that will say one thing and then never follow through, and has made many promises to my sister about helping her with tuition and a car and many other things, which is the reason I've been pushing on these points so much the past few weeks. This has more or less been a pattern of behavior for the past 2 years, and as much as I feel bad for him at times, it feels like a lot of issues stem from avoidance of the problem, and a lot of the time he puts his circumstances on other outside factors rather than focusing on what he can do. Obviously, I understand that these things that have happened in his life are discouraging and something he has to carry with him every day, but I feel as though for his family and himself, he should be working hard despite these things to try not to fall deeper into poverty. In contrast, my mother works extremely hard and barely can make ends meet, whereas my father is able to make good money quickly but does not have stable employment, which I believe is due to him not applying himself 100% or just being lazy. The last thing he said was the way I can help is by doing more and picking up more things that he does around the house, and I asked him, if I do this, will you sit down for a couple of hours a day and apply for something? And he said that help shouldn't be based on stipulations, which I do agree with a certain extent, but I feel that if I keep doing what I'm doing, it will have no effect on his motivation to find a job. My father never takes accountability for his actions, and it always seems like there's an excuse. So honestly, I'm not sure what to do. Do I give up on trying to help him follow through? I'm honestly not sure, because I've tried so much, and at this point, it's starting to affect me and my motivation. He is not receptive at all to what I'm saying, and instead he's just completely dismissing it and turning it back on me. I'm starting to feel like I need to leave because things will not change, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Honestly, it kind of sounds like your dad's depressed. Like he's not applying himself for anything, he's taking all this time to just sit around and do nothing, and it doesn't sound like he's really motivated to do anything that he would probably want to do. And there's also the other side of it that, you know what, unfortunately you can't make him do this. You can't pressure him, and you really shouldn't be enabling him. In my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would not only stop telling him to try and get up and get going, but I would also stop helping him. Your dad is treating you like the nagging parent when it comes to job applications, and that's not fair in the slightest. He is an adult, grown man. This is someone who should have his life together and knows how to get his life back together if he really wanted to. And unfortunately, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. And if your dad doesn't want to get up and find a job, then that's on him, not you. My My wife has soft cheated on me with her best friend, and I feel like my marriage is in shambles and I seriously don't know what to do. So I've been married to my wife by the name of Jane for 6 years. Jane is not her real name. We have a 3-year-old son, and we were both raised in an Orthodox religion, which is why getting married so young was normal for us. We have both had similar shifts to more progressive and less religious worldviews. Looking back now, we acknowledge our lives were unfortunately heavily shaped by our shared religion, but here we are anyways. A few years ago, my wife and I became good friends with some neighbors who went to church with us at the time. Very quickly, Jane became very close with Rose, who was the female neighbor. Eventually, they started becoming very touchy. They would hold hands, doing occasional sleepovers when me and Rose's husband were out of town, etc. I didn't like the romantic conversations that they seemed like they were having either. I also noticed that the friendship was becoming such a big priority that it was affecting our decisions about vacations and stuff like that. One weekend, I went on an out-of-state business trip. Rose slept in my house while I was gone, and when I got back, Jane immediately talked to me, crying and admitting that she and Rose had slept in the same bed and that things progressed from there, if you know what I mean. Not quite all the way, but just enough for this to be incredibly inappropriate. She said that they just didn't realize how far they were taking it until they had moved way past friendship touching. At this point in our lives, we were still very religious, so they both felt very guilty. I was really disappointed and I felt betrayed, but more so by how their relationship had slowly become romantic, despite me talking with Jane repeatedly about it. She promised to be better, but clearly that didn't happen. Over the years, we have stayed really good friends with Rose and her husband, which I now really regret and feel really dumb about. There have been times that I have noticed them sending highly romantic text messages or getting a little bit too cuddly. It really bothers me. When I bring it up, my wife is truly sorry about it and does a lot better for a while. She struggles with depression, so I felt like having Rose as a highly supportive friend is a net positive for her. Anyways, this last weekend, my wife accidentally left her phone next to me in my home office while she was out running an errand. She got a text message from Rose that I really didn't feel comfortable with, and then I proceeded to read many of their text messages. I saw a lot of text messages, literally 100 per day, about giving kisses, cuddling in bed together, about how they were each other's best parts of their lives, hinting that they wish they were in an even closer relationship, and all these other things. I was really hurt seeing this. I feel really stupid that I let this happen and that I have been willfully ignorant for so long. Over the years, I have waffled between being upset about the situation and wondering if I'm overreacting. I confronted my wife about it, and she is so sad about what she's done. She said they don't kiss on the mouth or anything like that, and that everything they say to each other is with the assumption that their husbands are actually the main priority. Now, I know the internet might jump to conclusions, but I really believe that they aren't kissing on the mouth or spending quality time together, if you know what I mean. My wife has always been very forthright and honest when I confront her about these things. After some questions, my wife admitted that she's not sure if she's bisexual or a lesbian, but she said that she is attracted to me. For now, she has stopped texting Rose. I told Rose's husband what happened, and I think he talked to Rose about it, but I haven't talked to him a lot since then. He is as aware as I am to their past and did have a very similar reaction to what I had. I am not sure if we will be friends anymore or what that will look like. I'm sad if I can't be friends with him anymore, but I am so done with my wife and Rose. I'm working on scheduling couples therapy for us. To be honest, I'm not sure what to do about this. I am totally exhausted by the situation, and overall, I just feel cheated. Whenever my wife expresses love to me, I can't help but think that it's a lie. I have loved being married to her, and I want us to be great parents, preferably together. How can I make this finally stop? Do I need to cut all ties with Rose and her husband? I don't want to leave my wife, and I'm honestly not sure if I can even salvage this marriage. What should I do? First off, you need to understand that your wife absolutely cheated on you. Like, she was straight up in bed with another woman, and they were kissing, making out, and doing a whole lot of other things. Like, seriously, you're really delusional if you think this is not cheating. And also, in my opinion, there's no gray area here. She literally went out of her way to continue messaging this Rose lady, all under the guise of, oh, we're just being really friendly with each other. No, you're talking about possibly dating. You're insinuating a lot of things that you want to do with each other, and that's not okay. You're literally married. So I think you need to take that into consideration. And hopefully couples therapy goes well for you, because your wife has absolutely betrayed your trust, and you really need to remember that moving forward. My coworker is making me uncomfortable with his manic behavior, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So I really need some perspective on an uncomfortable work situation. I've worked with my coworker for about about 7 years in an office with 30 other people. This coworker, who I'm going to call Jacob, has been unprofessional and makes everyone uncomfortable. Jacob is not his real name. Now, I'm trying to keep this vague, but he hates our boss, and he applied for her job before our boss was promoted, and he didn't get it. He wasn't qualified and is unprofessional. He has bullied people in the past and sent a really disturbing letter to another coworker. HR said they can't prove that Jacob sent it, but it was in his very distinct handwriting and happened shortly after an incident where he tried to intimidate this person. Jacob is in a union and uses that to his full advantage. He knows every trick and loophole to get out of work and go on long stretches of stress relief. He tries to say our boss is bothering him for telling him to do his job and not be insubordinate. He would leave work without telling our boss, and when he got in trouble, he tried to get me involved and vouch for him that he was in fact in the office that day. He did this by texting me in the middle of the night multiple times. I told him I wasn't sure, which was the truth, but I also was not sticking my neck out for this person. He also put a hurtful meme in our break room that targeted certain people's religious beliefs. But again, this was done in secret, so we couldn't prove it was him, but we all knew it was him. Equipment has gone missing from our office that only he had access to, but again, it could not be proven that he stole it. Our industry is small, and I know someone who previously worked with him, and he was let go for another office because equipment was stolen. There's more to this story, but it's just some of the things he does, doing sneaky things that can't be proven, but we know he's behind it. I fully believe he's a sociopath. He's accused others of trying to secretly record him, and I'm actually afraid he has a recording app open on his computer when he's not here, just so he can listen to us, and I'm not a paranoid person. Jacob has recently been back to the office after an extended sick leave. I sit next to him, which makes me uncomfortable, but here's the problem. Jacob has not been doing anything that would count as harassment, but his behavior makes me nervous and uncomfortable. I don't know how to describe it besides manic. It's like he's on something. He usually comes to work and doesn't talk to anyone. He sits at his computer all day and leaves at the end of the day, but every so often he comes in and acts like he did a bunch of substances. In fact, this happened yesterday. He was talking to me non-stop, and when I said I had my headphones in, he just kept talking. He was trying to show me stuff on his phone at full volume, blaring in my face. He went around to everyone's office and was just laughing at nothing, acting super friendly like everyone's his best friend. He was openly trying to engage coworkers about private matters in front of me, to the point where they said they just didn't feel comfortable having the conversation in public. I actually had to leave my desk a few times because I couldn't keep interacting with him because I was just getting nervous over his behavior. I'm being encouraged by a few of my coworkers to write a formal letter to our boss saying that his behavior is very concerning. One of my other coworkers already did it. They said that if he makes you uncomfortable, that's all that's important. He's not technically harassing me, but it's the sudden change in demeanor that has me on edge. The loudness, the insistent talking, the mania, and it's not just the manic behavior. It's just that this person has a history of being antisocial, so it's very jarring when you come to work and he's telling me his life story in rapid fire speech pattern and acting like we're best friends. What should I do? Well, I mean, this really is a weird situation. You have a coworker who is clearly used to working the system, and it kind of seems like he's doing that right now. Not even to mention the weird behavior that he's exhibiting, which yeah, I believe you when you say it. This guy is not acting right. So in my opinion, write a letter to your boss. Tell him exactly the way he's acting and all of your suspicions about this guy. Hopefully, if anything, they can at least move where you work so you can try and have a different place to work and you can kind of avoid him, because this guy's acting weird, and I don't blame you for feeling uncomfortable. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.